Chapter 1003 Assault from the Black Five Gang. Chapter 1003 Assault from the Black Five Gang. This was a wide, boundless world. There were fields of herbs, green mountains, and clear waters. There were spiritual and divine beasts, with a divine mist interweaving in the air. It was like a heaven on earth. Shui Yenyu had received a colossal impact. She had never seen a spatial god tool before. Could it be that they were all so huge? This was not something that could be described as a space anymore. It was another world in itself. Ling Han smiled slightly, and said, "Are you pleased with this place?" En. Shui Yenyu nodded quickly, her pretty face filled with pleasant surprise. However, she was immediately stunned, and asked, "Then, with both of us in here, wouldn't the spatial god tool be discovered by others?" "It won't." Ling Han shook his head with a smile. "I call this place the Black Tower because it appears to be a 9-story black tower, but only I can see it. That is because it is too small, like a mustard seed. Hence, even if I have entered as well, no one could possibly find such a small thing that is smaller than even a bit of dust." Shui Yenyu believed him because she had seen Ling Han disappear suddenly before. No matter how hard she'd searched, she could not find him. "Then, wouldn't we be invincible with this treasure?" she asked in pleased surprise. "My wife speaks true." Ling Han wrapped his arms around her, honestly and without reservation. He had not had his fill of kissing just now. "Damn pervert." Shui Yenyu murmured softly, yet did not struggle too strongly. Seeing such valuable treasures, she was also overwhelmed with emotion, a kind of strong emotion surging within her. The couple clung onto each other, and just when they were about to cross that final line, they stopped. "I'll show you something nice." Ling Han led Shui Yenyu to the location of the reincarnation tree. Shui Yenyu's beautiful eyes widened. "You wanted to show me this empty land?" No. Not much later, a reincarnation tree will grow from here," Ling Han declared proudly. Shui Yenyu was stunned, and said, "The seed of the reincarnation tree that you bought at the auction previously? But don't you know? It would need 12 trillion years to really grow to maturity." Don't worry. You will definitely not have to wait so long that your teeth would start to fall out." Ling Han laughed loudly, and pinched her pretty face. At most, it would take 3 years, and this reincarnation tree would show its incredible effects. At that time, you can cultivate here, and one day would be comparable to a whole lifetime. Shui Yenyu was a little doubtful. After all, it had already been said that it would need 12 trillion years to really mature, but the problem was, didn't he have a spatial god tool? Since even this kind of god tool existed, then it would not be impossible for it to possess some other unfathomable ability. She chose to believe Ling Han. "Indeed, you are a man of great fortune," Shui Yenyu declared with a nod. "To be able to come by opening the sky, how could this be done by any ordinary person?" Ling Han snickered, and said, "That's natural. Otherwise, how could I possibly have such a beautiful demon like you throw herself into my arms?" Who threw herself into your arms?" Shui Yenyu asked, her pretty face flushed. She was still a little easily embarrassed, unused to being teased by Ling Han. Her almond eyes were as soft as water, gentle enough to melt anyone's heart. "You damn pervert." She recalled the incident when Ling Han spied on her bathing, and could not help but become annoyed. She raised her fist, and struck out at Ling Han. How could it be that Ling Han would take that little bit of strength seriously? He pounced, and pushed down this captivating beauty. The couple rolled around on the grass, and very soon, they were kissing again. The night passed. Early the next morning, Ling Han and Shui Yenyu walked downstairs to have breakfast. Though Ling Han had not reached the last base the night before, the two of them had still slept in each other's arms. They were so intimate that they were no different from any other married couple, which caused Shui Yenyu's pretty face to be flushed again, her cheeks as if red clouds. She was astonishingly beautiful like this. Hence, as she walked down the stairs, she instantly attracted an uncountable number of gazes. A considerable number was grumbling, thinking that this Ling Han had to have really accumulated all the luck from his past life and this life to be able to share the night with such a captivating, seductive beauty. If it was them, what would they be coming down here for with such a captivating demon? They would keep the doors closed every day and have their fun in private. Because Ling Han had just established his position yesterday, no one dared to harass Shui Yenyu with vulgar words. However, there was still a considerable number of men taking advantage of her with their eyes, fiercely staring at Shui Yenyu's beautiful face, breasts, hips, and long legs as if they wanted nothing more than for their eyes to grow hands so that they could touch her as well. For those that had reached immortal level, their bodies had completely cast off their mortality, and they no longer needed to eat nor drink. As long as they had spiritual qi to absorb, they would not starve to death nor die of thirst, and could live normally until the end of their lifespan. However, the reason why cultivators cultivated was definitely not for the sake of suffering. Similarly, sleep was not necessary, yet everyone would still have the habit of sleeping because it was beneficial to the body. Meanwhile, eating and drinking was to satisfy the palate. This was a kind of enjoyment. Ling Han and Shui Yenyu both ordered their respective breakfasts. It was very simple. There were only a few steamed buns and a small side dish. Thankfully, this was provided for free. Otherwise, if they would still have to pay a few true origin stones for this, everyone would fly into rage. A waiter of the inn suddenly rushed over with a fearful expression, and exclaimed, "Oh no, many people from the Black Five gang have charged over. The five great forces frequently fought, and there would be a few casualties and injuries every time. Perhaps it was going to happen to him this time." What? Many waiters from the inn immediately drew out their weapons, and rushed out the doors. Recently, the two great forces were in an especially tense situation due to fighting over territory. Every few days, there would be a fierce battle. Hence, the Great Chariot Gang had long prepared as well, and immediately entered into battle mode. A thought flashed in Ling Han's head. He and Shui Yenyu walked to the doors, and began watching the excitement. Over a dozen people had come down the street, all dressed in black. Each of them exuded an aura of violence, but they should all be in Mountain River tier. Not one had reached the Sun Moon tier. This was natural. Sun Moon tier cultivator 7, if they were only in the low extreme, could be considered elites even in the imperial capital, and could take the position of an elder in the Scarlet Heaven Academy. In any clan, they would be considered pillars of support. Tyrant Axe Harbor was only a small place, after all, so how could any random fight draw out a Sun Moon tier elite? If such elites were really drawn out, then it was clear that both sides had become serious, and it was a situation of neither wanting to live while the other survived. Obviously, the five great forces would definitely not progress to this point. Otherwise, both sides would come off worse. Even if it was a narrow victory, that would be benefiting another. The remaining three forces would definitely join forces to suppress them, and divide the profits among themselves. The members of the Black Five Gang stopped at the entrance to the inn because the members of the Great Chariot Gang had also come out, not allowing them to advance one step further. What are the bastards from the Black Five Gang doing here? Get lost and go back wherever you came from. Get lost, or we will beat you until you burst. The members of the Great Chariot Gang took the initiative to provoke them because the other party was already intruding their territory. Within the group from the Black Five Gang, the people separated, and a young man walked out. He was not wearing black like others, but rather a flamboyant embroidered robe. It had so many colors that it made him look like a colorful butterfly. His looks, though, were not too bad: skin smooth, lips red, and teeth white. He also had a paper fan in his hand. This young man unfolded the paper fan, and waved it lightly. Then, he said, "Yesterday, someone beat some disciples of our Black Five Gang. Today, I have come purposely to look for this person. As for those unconcerned, get out of my way." Chapter 1004 Lustful Young Gang Leader. Chapter 1004 Lustful Young Gang Leader. Ling Han was slightly surprised. The Black Five Gang had actually come for him and Shui Yenyu with such swagger. Neither he nor Shui Yenyu had been too vicious or merciless when dealing with the five gang members. In fact, those five gang members had been the ones asking for trouble. Thus, it was quite surprising that the Black Five Gang had led so many members over for such a small matter. Ha 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 ha. The members of the Great Chariot Gang all started to roar with laughter upon hearing the youth's words. What a good beating. We should beat the kids from the Black Five gang whenever we see them. Is the person living at our inn? Hihi, we should give him a free stay as a reward. A composed middle-aged man walked out from the crowd of people. He was the head of great chariot gang in this area, and his cultivation level was at the consummate level of the mountain river tier. Young gang leader has personally come for such a small matter. The young gang leader was called Jiang Anyun, and he was the only child of Jiang Ji, the gang leader of the Black Five gang. It was quite strange that the only child of the Black Five gang's gang leader had been drawn over for such a small scuffle. Young gang leader, it was them, shouted a man who had a cast on his arm suddenly as he pointed at Ling Han and Shui Yenyu. He was none other than the man whose arm had been shattered by Ling Han after he tried to collect entrance fee yesterday. Jiang Anyun looked where he was pointing, and his eyes swept over Ling Han without pause. To be exact, his gaze came to an abrupt stop on Shui Yenyu's body. His eyes instantly widened, and his mouth involuntarily cracked into a grin. His throat moved a little as he gulped in excitement. She was far too beautiful and far too bewitching. Her stunning beauty was like a little hand that tickled at his heart, and he could barely stop himself from lunging over and pushing the seductive beauty down. Indeed, it was extremely normal for someone's underlings to be beaten in Tyrant Axe Harbor. Who told them to be the weaker side? Generally speaking, the Black Five gang would let such matters slide if no one was killed or severely wounded. After all, who knew if the aggressor had any powerful background or not? If the aggressor included descendants of some elite at the heavenly body tier, even the Yang clan would be obliterated in a day, much less the Black Five gang. However, Jiang Anyun had coincidentally heard his underlings say that there was a breathtakingly beautiful woman among the two people. Who didn't know that young gang leader Jiang couldn't resist the charms of beautiful women? Thus, he personally led his gang out under the guise of revenge when his goal was, in fact, meeting the stunning beauty. Sure enough, she was as beautiful as a fairy, as beautiful as peach flowers. Cough, cough. He finally regained his senses after coughing for a while, and said, "Brat, you wounded my underlings. How are you going to pay?" At this moment, there was no more noise from the great chariot gang. After all, Jiang Anyun wasn't a normal member of the Black Five gang. If he was wounded, there was a possibility that Jiang Ji would seek revenge without any thought for consequences. Although the great chariot gang was hostile toward the Black Five gang, they definitely didn't want to force them into a life-and-death struggle. As long as the Black Five gang didn't overstep any boundaries, they weren't willing to make the first move. Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, "Your underlings frightened me. How are they going to pay?" Oh, so it was him. This thought appeared in everyone else's mind when they heard the exchange between Jiang Anyun and Ling Han. They couldn't help but find the situation funny. You beat his underlings, yet you're saying that you were frightened? Sure enough, trouble would follow Ling Han wherever he went. Jiang Anyun humphed, and said, "You're standing there without a scratch on your body. Why do we need to pay? Enough with the nonsense. Hand your female companion over, and I'll count this matter as settled." So that's what he wants. The spectators instantly understood what was going on. No wonder Jiang Anyun had come for such a small matter. He had set his eyes on Ling Han's female companion. Pay. What a lecherous bastard. However, many people were actually extremely envious of Jiang Anyun. If they were as powerful as him, they would also barge in with a domineering aura and forcefully make the seductive beauty their own. Truly, it would be worth sacrificing 10 years of their life just to touch her slender and beautiful hand. If they could embrace her for a night, Shui Yenyu drew her divine sword in fury, and was just about to charge over. Ling Han raised his arm to block her, and said, "There's no need for you to mind this barking dog. If it truly jumps here to bite people, we can lop its head off then." Shui Yenyu nodded as she sheathed her sword. However, her face was still frosty with anger. Even so, her angry expression was still captivating enough to bewitch many people. Jiang Anyun gulped down his saliva, and suddenly shouted at Ling Han, "Brat, I'm willing to pay 1 million true origin stones for her." Gasp. Everyone inhaled sharply. 1 million true origin stones. What king of stunning wealth was this? Generally speaking, One true origin stone was enough to buy a flower-like beauty. Meanwhile, 10,000 true origin stones was enough to captivate the heart of a beauty at the mountain river tier. So, what could 1 million true origin stones buy? Young gang leader Jiang was truly addicted to beautiful women. Ling Han humphed in anger. He wouldn't sell Shui Yenyu even if he were short on money. Moreover, how could Jiang Anyun truly pay him 1 million true origin stones? He was merely a young gang leader, not the actual leader of the gang. His offering a whopping 1 million true origin stones was simply bait to lure Ling Han away from the territory of the Great Chariot Gang. That way, it would be much easier for them to snatch the beauty. Wife, don't mind these stupid fools, Ling Han said to Shui Yenyu. Shui Yenyu nodded in understanding. She naturally wouldn't bother with such boorish people. The two of them turned around to enter the inn. Jiang Anyun wanted to chase them, yet the members of the Great Chariot Gang had already formed a barrier to block his path. Young gang leader. The members of the Black Five Gang hurriedly held Jiang Anyun back. If he were captured by the Great Chariot Gang, they would definitely be beaten to death by Jiang Anyun when they returned to their territory. Let go of me, Jiang Anyun shouted. His soul had already been stolen by Shui Yenyu. Young gang leader, please listen to me, an elder said. These two youths have definitely come here to search for treasures in the sea. If that's the case, dealing with them becomes simple. As long as we board the same ship as them, we can, they won't be able to escape our grasp. Jiang Anyun's eyes lit up in delight. This was a brilliant idea. However, he immediately said, we have to wait until tomorrow for the earliest ship. Young gang leader, endure for one more day, just one more day, the elder said hurriedly. This young gang leader is far too rash. How can he be so addicted to female beauty? Fortunately, our gang leader is still young and healthy, and will definitely live longer than Jiang Anyun. Otherwise, if this person were to become gang leader, the gang would definitely collapse in 10 days. Let's go. Jiang Anyun only waved his arm and signaled for everyone to leave when he couldn't see Shui Yenyu's figure anymore. One day will pass by quickly. However, Jiang Anyun exploded in rage the very next day. Ling Han and Shui Yenyu hadn't boarded a ship. Rather, they were still holed up in the inn. Why aren't they setting out to sea yet? He asked loudly. He really wanted to kill someone right now. The elder who had proposed the plan wiped beads of cold sweat from his forehead as he replied, Young gang leader, perhaps they're afraid of you? Trash. Jiang Anyun slapped the elder in fury, and then said, keep them under constant surveillance and don't let them escape. Otherwise, I'll skin you alive. Chapter 1005 Arrival of Pursuing Enemies. Chapter 1005 Arrival of Pursuing Enemies. In reality, Ling Han wasn't delaying their journey because he was afraid of Jiang Anyun. A ship would depart from Tyrant Axe Harbor every 3 days, yet the sizes of these ships varied. For example, the ship this time was a large-sized ship that could hold more passengers. Moreover, it had the highest safety rating out of all the ships as it had a powerful elite at the Sun-Moon tier guarding it. However, Ling Han and Shui Yenyu had come to exterminate pirates, so the more powerful were the people on their ship, the less likely they were to be targeted by pirates. Thus, they naturally wouldn't choose to take such a ship. They had to wait for a small ship that was only guarded by a cultivator at the consummate level of the mountain river tier, as this would greatly increase their chances of being targeted by pirates. The ship in 3 days was still going to be a large ship. They had to wait for another 3 days after that for there to be a small ship. After learning of this, Ling Han and Shui Yenyu entered the Black Tower to cultivate. Shui Yenyu practiced her martial arts techniques, while Ling Han investigated the new pill recipes that he had obtained. Although there were only 4 recipes, the levels of the recipes ranged from level 1 divine pill up to level 4 divine pill. This gradual increase in difficulty was exactly what Ling Han wanted. Before now, Ling Han hadn't had a chance to investigate these pill recipes, as the two had been cultivating ore on the road the entire time. He was the Alchemy Emperor, and he had even managed to refine a semi-divine pill while he was still in the small world. Right now, he was already very close to becoming a divine-grade alchemist. There are two things of utmost importance in alchemy. The first is the art of controlling flames, and the second is the intertwining of divine patterns that have been extracted from medicinal ingredients. However one looks at it, these two things both boil down to control and the application of one's divine sense. I've drunk reincarnation tea before, so my divine sense is naturally far stronger than that of ordinary cultivators at the medium extreme. In fact, it might even be on par with that of cultivators at the consummate level. Coupled with the tempering by the indestructible heaven's scroll, the strength of my divine sense is unparalleled among those at the same cultivation level as me. In other words, my condition right now is far, far better than others. In terms of pill refinement techniques, there's not much difference between divine level and ordinary level spiritual herbs. It's just that the peak temperature of the flames and method of intertwining the divine patterns far exceed those needed for heaven-level spiritual herbs. Then, let me start now. Ling Han started to refine the heavenly chi pill. It was a level 1 divine pill that could increase the speed of origin power accumulation for cultivators at the mountain river tier. There were many pills that had the same effect, but the heavenly chi pill was definitely one of the best among them. However, all pills came with their drawbacks, and one couldn't eat pills as if they were candy. Thus, if one could only ingest 10 pills a month, pills that were more effective were naturally more desirable. Fail, fail, fail. It was a divine pill, after all, so Ling Han's cauldron continued to explode as if he had become an inexperienced alchemy student again. However, he wasn't disheartened, as he made clear improvements with each failure that he experienced. Disappointingly, however, Ling Han still hadn't managed to succeed when 6 days passed, and they needed to set sail. I can probably succeed after a dozen or so more attempts. Ling Han and Shui Yenyu exited the Black Tower and headed to the harbor. Not long after they arrived, others also started to arrive one after another. There were even some people with whom they were familiar. Jiang Ganyun was naturally one of them. He had 10 underlings at the mountain river tier, and his eyes almost bulged out of their sockets as he leered at Shui Yenyu. Those 3 are from the Luo clan, Shui Yenyu whispered in Ling Han's ears. Luo Yu, Luo Wu, and Luo Senyun. Luo Senyun is an elite at the Sun-Moon tier, and he most likely advanced to this tier over 30,000 years ago. It's extremely likely that he's already reached the peak stage of the low extreme. Shui Yenyu glanced at another direction, and continued, those 2 over there were Xiao and Fan Yong, the other 2 followers of Zhao Lun. They've been at the high extreme of the mountain river tier for a long time, so they've most likely reached the peak stage already. Ling Han nodded as he listened to Shui Yenyu. Meanwhile, he also noticed 4 sharply dressed females. Weren't they Liu Ying and the others, the 4 female guards of Sho Yuan? These 4 females couldn't be underestimated, as their cultivation levels were all at the consummate level of the mountain river tier. Apart from these familiar faces, there was also a youth in coarse clothes who looked to be around 17 or 18 years old. However, he was evidently at the immortal level already, though it was hard to discern what specific tier and sub-minor level he was at. This youth had a fierce gaze that could instill fear in those he stared at. There was also a woman in a white dress who was as beautiful as a celestial maiden. Her skin was as white as jade, her lips were as red as dye, and her long hair was braided into a large plait that rested on her jade-like neck. She wore an aloof expression that made her appear like an unapproachable icy beauty. Nearby, there was also a youth who hugged his sword to his chest wherever he walked. It seemed as if he was unwilling to ever let go of the sword. The last person present was an ordinary man in grey clothes. He was the type of person who wouldn't attract a second glance if thrown into a crowd of people. Ling Han had the cloud-piercing shuttle, so he and Shui Yenyu had naturally arrived here the quickest. However, the Luo clan, Sho clan, and Zhao clan were all able to easily identify his final destination. Thus, they were also able to arrive here not long after Ling Han. "We're departing in 30 minutes, a sailor shouted. "If you want to board, then hurry up. Each person has to pay 10 true origin stones." The coarse-clothed youth was the first person to board. Following him, the woman in white and the sword-hugging youth also boarded. However, no one else followed after them. Ling Han couldn't help but smile. By the looks of it, The remaining people all had their eyes set on him. If he didn't board, the others naturally wouldn't board, either. Come on, then. He and Shui Yenyu walked onto the ship deck after paying 20 true origin stones. They stood near the bow of the ship. Immediately after they boarded, the people from the Luo clan, Sho clan, and Zhao clan all paid 10 true origin stones each and boarded the ship. Halt. You're at the Sun Moon tier, so you're not allowed to board this ship. The sailor stopped Luo Senyun from boarding the ship. Why can't I board? Luo Senyun asked in displeasure. A mere cultivator at the Mountain River tier actually dared to block him? He unleashed his aura, and instantly caused the sailor to tremble. Humph. Sir, please go elsewhere if you want to show off your might. Don't forget, this is Tyrant Axe Harbor. An elder in an embroidered robe walked over like a spirit. There were a sun and moon hovering behind his back, and he said, "The rules of our young clan are simple. Small ships only accept passengers at the Mountain River tier. This is to ensure everyone's safety and to prevent fellow passengers from targeting each other while out at sea. The guards on small ships were only at the consummate level of the Mountain River tier, so how could they maintain the safety of all the passengers if an elite at the Sun Moon tier boarded?" Luo Senyun stared at the elder for a long time before humphing in displeasure. He turned and whispered a few words to Luo Yu and Luo Wu before retreating back onto the harbor. A powerful dragon couldn't defeat a snake in its nest. Moreover, Luo Senyun couldn't be considered a powerful dragon when compared to the Yang clan anyway. He didn't mask his killing intent as he stared at Ling Han intently. Even if he couldn't board the ship, Luo Yu and Luo Wu were both at the consummate level of the Mountain River tier. Luo Yu was more so at the peak stage of the consummate level already. He could definitely suppress Ling Han with a single hand. After 30 minutes, the ship raised its anchor and started to sail toward the boundless sea ahead. This ship was small, measuring only 30 meters in length and 15 or so meters in height. There was a total of 3 levels, with the uppermost level for passengers and the lowest level for sailors. The middle level was for storing weapons, and it also housed the cannons of the ship. These cannons were powered by true origin stones and could unleash devastating attacks. However, these cannons were normally never used, as they consumed 1 or more true origin stones with each shot that they fired. The price of using them was far too high. The fuel for the ship was also true origin stones, and there was a formation set up inside the ship. When they couldn't rely on the wind, they could use true origin stones to activate the formation and power the ship. When the ship disappeared from the harbor, many pairs of eyes were already fixed on Ling Han's body. Chapter 1006, Pill Refinement. Chapter 1006, Pill Refinement. Ha 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 ha. Brat, you finally couldn't resist setting out to sea. Jiang Guanyun started to roar with laughter. In his eyes, that delicious and charming, seductive beauty would be his once Ling Han decided to set out to sea. Ling Han completely ignored him. After all, Jiang Guanyun was merely a clown. Seize him. Jiang Guanyun's displeasure turned to anger when he saw Ling Han's reaction. He was the young gang leader of the Black Five gang. Impudence, a burly man shouted. He was truly burly, and his height reached an astonishing 3 meters. His body bulged with jet-black muscles, and it looked as if he were forged from cold iron. The cold glint reflected by his skin was especially clear. Who are you? How dare you speak like that in front of me? Jiang Guanyun was extremely annoyed. Was his status as the young gang leader of the Black Five gang all for show? Why was everyone going against his wishes? Young gang leader. An elder hurriedly tugged at him and whispered, "This is the Yang clan's Yang Taicheng, an elite at the consummate level of the Mountain River tier. It's rumored that he practices a peculiar cultivation technique, causing his physique to become as strong as godly metal. He's extremely favored by the Yang clan." Jiang Guanyun's temper instantly died down. He was indeed the young gang leader of the Black Five gang, but how could the Black Five gang compare to the Yang clan? Don't even think about causing troubles on my ship. Yang Taicheng swept his gaze over every single person on the ship. With his rich experience, how could he not notice that many of the passengers had set their eyes on the young man and woman? Once you disembark my ship, you can naturally settle all the differences between you. However, don't blame me for being rough if you try to cause troubles on my ship." Yang Taicheng unleashed his powerful aura without reservation as he spoke. "Brother Yang, is it? My hands are a little itchy, so why don't we have a short spar?" Luo Yu stepped forward with a smile on his face. "No problem," Yang Taicheng answered without hesitation. If he didn't display his prowess, who knew what troubles these passengers would cause? Luo Yu took a few steps forward before pressing his hand toward Yang Taicheng. Peng! 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 Yang Taicheng also moved, and both of them used speed to fight speed. They exchanged over 10 blows in a fraction of a second. Luo Yu suddenly gave a muffled groan as he retreated several steps. His face had already become frighteningly pale. "Good fight," Yang Taicheng said calmly as he cupped his fists. Luo Yu finally came to his senses after a short while, and hoarsely said, "Brother Yang is indeed strong. I'm not your opponent." It was especially evident how powerful Yang Taicheng was after he exchanged a few strikes with Luo Yu. The people on the ship were all astonished, and no one dared to underestimate his power anymore. Initially, the members of the Luo clan had all felt superior as they had come from the imperial capital. They despised the local residents of this poor and rural area. However, Yang Taicheng's strength gave them a huge slap across the face. This person is most likely a 2-star genius. His cultivation level is at the peak stage of the consummate level, and is also a 2-star genius. He's probably the most powerful person on this ship. It looks like we won't be able to kill Ling Han on this ship. We'll wait. Their expressions didn't change as they spoke, and they all wore radiant smiles as they reached a decision. "I'll repeat myself again," Yang Taicheng said in a threatening voice. "No matter who you are, don't even think about targeting other passengers on my ship. If you dare to kill someone, I'll also dare to kill you." Humph. Everyone remained silent, and only Jiang Anyun wore his displeasure on his face. From this, it could be seen just how foolish this young gang leader was. He had already reached the mountain river tier, yet he still didn't have any astuteness at all. He was already accustomed to acting as he pleased, so he was naturally extremely unhappy now that someone was suppressing him. Yang Taicheng entered his cabin to rest after delivering his warning. This was going to be a very, very long trip. Their ship would sail on a set route. It would anchor in a few renowned regions. During this journey they would stop for 1 to 3 days at each place, and then set off for the next region. So, what exactly were those renowned regions? These were areas where treasures could potentially be found. When that star had crashed down, it had broken into several pieces. There were 7 extremely large pieces, and they had each landed in a different region in the sea. Thus, people would normally venture to these 7 regions when searching for treasures. Ling Han gazed at the scenery for a while. An astonishing gravity field enveloped the entire star sea, and if cultivators tried to swim here, they would exhaust themselves and drown in no time. Of course, they could still recover their origin power when they reached the bottom, so they still had a chance to swim back up. However, a plethora of terrifying demonic beasts that were already accustomed to the crushing gravity field lurked under the sea. Moreover, this was the sea, after all, so it would be extremely dangerous if one were to come across a demonic beast that was at the same cultivation level as them. If the demonic beast's cultivation level was higher, then one was pretty much as good as dead. When battling under the sea's surface, the battle prowess of humans would decrease dramatically. Ling Han hadn't come to search for treasures, so he naturally wasn't worried about such dangers. After gazing at the scenery for a while, he returned to his cabin, and continued to refine pills. Wasting time was a disgraceful habit. The ship continued along its route, but apart from a measly few people, no one else was interested in diving into the sea. They only had one target, Ling Han. After 7 days, Ling Han finally managed to refine his first batch of heavenly chi pills. The heavenly chi pill was mainly aimed at cultivators at the low extreme of the mountain river tier. Cultivators at the medium extreme could still ingest this pill, yet its effects would be much less evident. Ling Han gifted these pills to Shui Yenyu, and the seductive beauty was extremely astonished. Ling Han can actually refine pills as well. Moreover, He genuinely managed to refine divine pills. She had indeed seen Ling Han refining pills before. However, he had failed time and time again, so she had thought that he had only just set foot on his pill refinement journey. Who would have imagined that he was refining heavenly chi pills? In the imperial capital, such pills could be sold for 100 true origin stones each. Ling Han was only able to refine 3 pills the first time. However, he was able to refine 5 the second time, 7 the third time, and a perfect 10 the 10th time. In his eyes, this was extremely normal. As the alchemy emperor, he had only taken so long to refine this pill because he had been lacking in resources and cultivation level. Now that he had resolved these issues, it was naturally easy for him to succeed in his pill refinement. However, Shui Yenyu was given quite a large fright. Was this man a monster? Not only did his cultivation level advance rapidly, but he was even tremendously talented in alchemy. In any case, she was still extremely happy about this, as the heavenly chi pill was exactly what she needed right now. This pill could help her rapidly raise her cultivation level. After using all of the ingredients, Ling Han started to study the second pill recipe. Heavenly Pearl Pill. It was a level 2 divine pill that could elevate both the origin power and physical power of a cultivator. It could even strengthen one's physique to a small degree. Many people practiced body arts in the immortal realm, yet very few could master such arts. One of the major problems was strengthening one's physique. Only a tiny number of people could elevate their physique to the immortal level, as this required far too many resources. As a result, the Heavenly Pearl Pill was extremely expensive, with each pill having a cost of 300 true origin stones. Moreover, this pill was often out of stock. At Ling Han's current level, this pill was the most useful to him. He was extremely motivated, and so immediately started to drain his ingredients after familiarizing himself with the pill recipe. Chapter 1007, The Great Danger Hidden in the Fog. Chapter 1007, The Great Danger Hidden in the Fog. Every single alchemist was nurtured by copious amounts of wealth. The only difference was whether it was a larger or a smaller amount. In a mere 4 days' time, Ling Han had refined materials worth the astronomical amount of 2 million true origin stones. This sum was sufficient to make a force like the Luo clan feel extreme heartache, and it was all spent on a level 2 divine pill. If it was a level 3, level 4, or level 5, what then? Every time an alchemist's furnace exploded in the concoction process, it would really bring one to tears. Ling Han spent a total of 1 million true origin stones on alchemical materials, and only 100,000 was spent on the materials to concoct the heavenly chi pill. The other materials were for the concoction of the heavenly pearl pill. As for level 3 and level 4 divine pills, he was not going to consider it for the moment. Everyone, please gather at the front deck. A voice suddenly rang through the whole ship. It was young Tietcheng's voice. What happened? Shui Yenyu asked. Ling Han shook his head. I don't know. Let's go out to take a look first. The couple walked out of their cabin. Jiang Guanyun just so happened to walk out from the cabin next door as well. His face was completely black, and he used a ferocious gaze to sweep endlessly over Ling Han as if he had caught an adulterous couple red-handed. In his thoughts, what could a lone man and woman be up to in a room by themselves? It had to be *********. They arrived at the ship's prow, and could see that there were already a few people standing there. We are about to enter into the zone of the black fog, Yang Taicheng explained as he pointed ahead. In the black fog, our divine sense and vision would be greatly affected. At most, we would only be able to see objects half a foot in front of us. He paused, and then continued, that was why I gathered everyone here. I do not want any unpleasant things to happen. It was very obvious. Once they entered into the zone of the black fog, his divine sense could not possibly shroud the whole ship, and anything that happened would be out of his control. He was not ignorant of the state of mutual hostility among the passengers on this ship. If someone really died, he would definitely have to bear responsibility. Hence, everyone had to come out obediently, and stay there right under his nose. Then, he would not have to worry about any possible problems. Ling Han looked out into the distance, and could see an area of black fog roughly 3 miles ahead of them. It had a very wide range, and there was no way to circle around it. It had to be known that the ships that traveled in this sea all moved very, very slowly. If they really circled around it, the length of their journey would probably increase by more than half a day at the very least. This is a characteristic feature of the Star Sea. It would occasionally create black fog, but as for the reason why that is the case, no one knows to this day, Shui Yenyu murmured lowly next to him. I am really quite interested now. I'd like to dive beneath it and take a look, Ling Han said with a smile, but then shook his head. Why is this bunch of pirates so obedient? It has already been quite a few days, and there is still no activity from them. Shui Yenyu's slender brows wrinkled as well. Apparently, she was very unhappy. Others would be afraid of encountering pirates, but the two of them wanted nothing more but to encounter pirates. I have to trouble everyone to all stand where you are obediently without moving when we pass through this black fog. Otherwise, Yang Taicheng clenched his fists, his eyes filled with threat. No one opened their mouths to speak, but their eyes were wandering in all directions. It was apparent that they all had their own plans. Be careful. Shui Yenyu was a little nervous. There was no shortage of elites in the high extreme of Mountain River tier here, and there were also elites in the consummate level. Ling Han cracked a grin, and said, "It's all right. Later, we'll enter into the Black Tower to talk about life, and who cares what trouble they create outside." Immediately, a ripple of emotion surged in Shui Yenyu's heart. This guy, the big pervert he was, liked to explore her body when they were talking about life. The ship was already getting closer and closer to that black-colored fog, and the atmosphere on board was suddenly becoming tenser as well. Later, when we enter into the fog, you all kill that brat. Jiang Ganyun issued a command to his subordinates. But, young gang leader, Yang Taicheng is just on the sidelines, one of his subordinates protested weakly. Humph, so what? The fog hampers our divine sense and sight, and as long as you move fast enough, who will know you were the ones who killed him? Jiang Ganyun asked. Then, he added, you definitely must not injure that woman. Otherwise, I will toss you all into the sea to be buried next to her. Yes, young gang leader. There were a total of 8 members from the Black 5 gang aboard the ship, and the remaining 7 could only obey his command obediently. Jiang Ji was busy cultivating, and was still hoping for Jiang Ganyun to carry on the ancestral line. Thus, even if Jiang Ji knew about this, it was possible that he would be supportive of it. On the other side, Zhuo Xiao and Fan Yong were also whispering amongst themselves, discussing how they should make their move later. Meanwhile, the 2 people from the Luo clan were similarly not content with peace, their 4 eyes focused on Ling Han while boiling with killing intent. The beautiful faces of Liu Ying and the other death guards were ice-cold, and danger was lying all around them. The eyes of that middle-aged man in grey, though, were flickering as his attention wandered in all directions. Meanwhile, the young man that hugged a sword, the youth in coarse cloth, and the woman in white stood next to young Taicheng as if they, too, had sensed that there would be violent turbulence ahead. They did not want to be drawn into the storm. It was in this kind of atmosphere that the ship slowly moved into the fog. Immediately, everyone felt as if they had been blinded. Even if they had their eyes open, they could not see anything in front of them. Only when they placed their hands in front of their eyes could they barely see a vague outline. It was even worse for divine sense. The moment they stretched their divine sense out of their bodies, it would be swallowed up by something. It was rendered completely useless. Thankfully, their hearing was still there. Otherwise, if they lost their 3 basic senses sight, hearing, and divine sense at the same time, a considerable many would probably be driven mad. It was complete silence on the ship. However, the silence was only momentary. Peng, 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 peng. Immediately, sounds of battle were heard, and there were violent waves of power surging out, yet they were completely incapable of moving the fog in this place. Thankfully, this ship was specially built, and could sustain that terrifying gravity. It was naturally incomparably sturdy as well. At least, Mountain River tier cultivators would find it very difficult to damage this ship. Stop! Stop! Yang Taicheng roared in anger continuously. He charged into the battle, and whomever he encountered, he would grab and toss out of the melee. Peng, peng, peng. They endlessly crashed into the pillars and ship's hold. The crew of the ship joined him, trying to stop the chaotic battle. However, this only caused the battle to become even more chaotic. In the fog, nobody could see clearly, and they could only move based on instinct. After about 30 minutes, a ray of light suddenly shone in, and the fog began to dissipate. The battle instantly ceased. When the long mist sky once again reappeared, everyone was obediently standing where they were as if they had all been civilized people just now and none of them had moved from their initial places at all. But if one took a closer look, they would be able to realize that there were some who had had their faces punched, a bruise forming around their eyes. There were others whose hair was messed up, and some even had their clothes torn open, every one of them cutting very sorry figures indeed. Young gang leader. An exclamation of shock rang out. Everyone turned to look in the direction of the exclamation, and saw that Jiang Anyun was lying face up on the ground, a bloody hole in his chest. It pierced precisely through his heart, and Jiang Anyun had already lost all signs of life. His expression was one filled with shock, as if he had completely not imagined that he would be attacked in this manner, and it would even be a fatal strike. You. It must have been you. The elder from the Black Five gang pointed at Ling Han, his face filled with murderous intent. Chapter 1008, Who is the Killer? Chapter 1008, Who is the Killer? Me. Ling Han smiled slightly. Previously, when they entered into the zone of fog, he had entered into the Black Tower with Shui Yenyu. What business of his was it that there had been a battle raging outside? However, he could not use it as evidence. He merely shook his head, and said, "Killing him is not worth my time." When he said this, he, too, felt curious. The people here should be aiming for him, so why was Jiang Anyun the one who had been stabbed and killed? Looking at this wound, it was both thin and deep. Obviously, the attacker had struck ruthlessly. His attack was meant to be fatal. It was definitely a planned assassination, and not a spontaneous action. Aside from you, who else could it be? The old man exclaimed, his beard shaking in anger. Jiang Anyun was the sole son of Jiang Ji, and though his character was unbearable, he bore the heavy responsibility of continuing the ancestral line for the Jiang clan. And now, before he had even sown the seeds, he was dead. Jiang Ji would definitely fly into a thunderous rage. He was now busy cultivating in seclusion, so where would he find the time to ***** and have another son? That's right. He was your foe, and it was already known to all from the first day we boarded. If it was not you, who else would do such a thing? Luo Wu interrupted, a clear handprint on his face. Who knew who was the one who'd slapped him? Instantly, Yang Tietcheng's eyes swept over, killing intent brimming in their depth. In truth, Ling Han did not fear this man. If it was a battle, it was true that he was no match for him at present. However, with his incredible physique, he was absolutely confident he could survive. Even if worse came to worst, he still had the Black Tower, didn't he? If there was no absolute necessity, what need was there for him to fight someone completely unrelated to death and fall for the dastardly trap of another? He now understood what was going on. Though the murderer had killed Jiang Anyun, the former's motive was still him. It was to slander him, and make use of Yang Taicheng and the Black Five gang to get rid of him. Ling Han looked completely calm, and said, "I will repeat it one more time. It was not I who killed him. If I really wanted to kill him, it would definitely not end with stabbing him to death with a single strike. Instead, I'd beat his head to a pulp." "Ha, so you admit that you have a motive now?" Zhuo Xiao suddenly jumped up. "Are you an idiot?" Ling Han looked at him in disdain. "Brother Yang, this person has an old grudge with Jiang Anyun. Furthermore, he has also admitted just now that he had the idea of killing the latter," Luo Yu said to Yang Taicheng. Fan Yong, meanwhile, asked sarcastically, "Ling Han, you said you are not the killer, but what proof do you have?" "That's right. If it wasn't you, show some proof," Luo Wu called out as well. On the issue of dealing with Ling Han, they were on the same side. Ling Han scoffed out coldly, and said, "You really are a bunch of idiots. Since you all accuse me of murder, then it should be you who should be producing the evidence, and not I. Otherwise, I can also say that you ate **t when you were little. If not, show some proof. You spied on him bathing yesterday, so please show some evidence to prove your innocence. He pointed at them one by one, and accused each person of a nonsensical crime. Everyone knew that he was speaking nonsense, but Ling Han had clearly conveyed his meaning, and it was whoever made the accusation should produce evidence to support his claim. Otherwise, wouldn't others have to run about everywhere to prove their innocence just because you were opening your mouth and making an accusation? If they wanted to accuse Ling Han of being the killer, they would have to show proof. Otherwise, it was best that they spoke less crap. In that moment, everyone's expression was cold. Previously, the situation was completely chaotic, and their divine sense and sight was both jammed. In truth, no one knew who the killer was, but since someone had jumped out to accuse Ling Han of the crime, they naturally were happy to go with the flow. After all, killing Ling Han was their main purpose. Yang Tietcheng's thick brows wrinkled into a frown. The relations of the people on board were complicated, and he, too, could not confirm who the killer was. Hence, he said, I will naturally get to the bottom of this matter. I ask everyone to cooperate with me. As you like, everyone replied. They all stayed on the deck to cooperate with Yang Tietcheng's investigation. In truth, this murder was very hard to investigate. After all, everyone had a spatial spirit tool, and if they hid the murder weapon inside, who would be able to find it? To say the least, they could have directly thrown it into the sea. What? Would you still steer the ship back into the fog to search for it? The investigation naturally came to a dead end. On the other hand, the names of the other few people were made known. The young man hugging a sword was Jin Zhehui, the old man in grey was called Zhu Gaoyang, and the youth in coarse robes was called Fu Tian. Finally, the beauty in white was named Yin Yuanxiang. Forget about the remaining 7 people from the Black 5 gang. They were all trash, so who cared what their names were? Yang Taicheng could feel a headache coming on. Now that someone had died on board, he would definitely have to bear responsibility. More importantly, there was not the slightest bit of clue who the killer was. It seemed like the person who had done the deed was an assassin. This sword strike was really too decisive and clean. An assassin. The others were also considering this issue. After all, it was naturally a good thing to be able to push the blame on Ling Han, but if there really was an assassin on board, all of them would be in danger. Who knew if the next person to fall would be them so they could be used to frame Ling Han? Of course, it was still possible that Ling Han was the one who had done it. It was precisely because the truth was shrouded in fog that everyone felt a sense of danger. They felt as if not one person could be trusted, like everybody next to them could possibly become a killer. Why don't we enter into the black fog once more? Ling Han suddenly suggested. Everyone was stunned. Have you gone mad? In the fog, sight and divine sense would both be greatly affected, and battle prowess would drop drastically. No one was willing to stay in that kind of environment. Perhaps the killer would still make use of the opportunity again, and we would be able to find him then, Ling Han continued. In any case, his target was the pirates, so he did not care about the change in the ship's course, nor did he care if there would be time wasted. I think that this is not a bad suggestion. Luo Yu spoke up first, his eyes focused on Ling Han, revealing a sinister killing intent. Previously, he was slightly surprised that he had not managed to find Ling Han, but this time, it would definitely not happen again. Yes. Liu Ying and the other 3 women also expressed their agreement. Fan Yong and Zhuo Xiao exchanged a look, and then nodded slowly. Meanwhile, Jin Zhehui, Zhu Gaoyang, Fu Tian, and Yin Yuanxiang did not have an opinion. They neither agreed nor objected, looking completely like you can all go crazy on your own, and I will just take care of myself. Seeing that none of the guests objected to steering back into the black fog, Yang Taicheng humphed, and said, fine, then we'll go back into the black fog. He was also feeling frustrated. Someone had actually dared to commit murder right in front of his eyes. He would definitely find this person at all cost. The ship slowly turned around, and steered towards the fog. No one spoke any further, just as if they were all preparing to make their move. Very soon, the fog enveloped them. The sun's light gradually disappeared, and it finally became complete darkness. It was in that one instant that banging sounds rang out. Battle had erupted. E-N-R-E. Endless grunts were heard. Someone bounced out and crashed into the ship's hold, and someone suffered a few punches and palm strikes, releasing pained grunts. Someone had even been slashed with a sword, his blood streaming, and the warm liquid covering the faces of others. So what if elites like them could not see? They had long since had a clear grasp of the environment on the ship's deck, and like a blind man that had lived in a house for a considerable number of years, they were very familiar with their surroundings. They all thought that they had clearly targeted Ling Han, and fought with wild abandon. Chapter 1009 Entering the Fog for the Third Time. Chapter 1009 Entering the Fog for the Third Time. You're so mischievous, Shui Yenyu said with a sigh in the Black Tower. Luo Yu and Luo Wu were both pillars of the Luo clan, while Zhuo Xiao, Fan Yong, and Liu Ying and the other three women were all cultivators who had lived for tens of thousands of years. However, all of them were wrapped around his little finger. He claimed that he wanted to catch the perpetrator's tail, when in fact, he simply wanted these people to fight among themselves. Meanwhile, he could spectate from the sidelines and enjoy their aimless struggle. Do you like it? Ling Han asked with a smile. It was a pity that the fog still obstructed his vision even though he had already entered the Black Tower. This disappointed him greatly. No. Shui Yenyu answered hurriedly. She was afraid that Ling Han would start to grope her again, which was something that she enjoyed yet disliked. Ling Han chuckled, and said, "Don't they say that girls like bad boys?" Twisted logic. Shui Yenyu scolded. She definitely wouldn't be attracted to a bad man. Otherwise, how would her relationship with Zhao Lun have become so bad? It's about time for us to exit, Ling Han said. He could already sense the sunshine starting to illuminate the ship again. Shio. The two of them exited the Black Tower. However, thanks to the black fog, no one had discovered that they had disappeared and then reappeared again. The radiant sunshine shone upon the ship. As though they had returned to the world from a dark and sinister hell, everyone felt a slight sense of delight. It felt truly horrible to lose their vision and divine sense. Gasp. However, everyone was immediately stunned. There were 7 new corpses laid in a neat row on the deck. These corpses belonged to the last remaining members of the Black Five gang. Moreover, all of them had been killed in the same manner, with a fatal sword wound to the chest. Who was it? Everyone's gazes involuntarily turned to Ling Han. He was the one who had suggested entering the black fog again, so it was only normal for everyone to suspect him the most. Ling Han, what do you have to say this time? Luo Yu shouted immediately. There's naturally nothing to say to stupid fools like you. Ling Han smiled, and said, my suggestion was quite good, wasn't it? The culprit has indeed acted again. However, none of you worked together. Otherwise, with the help of several elites at the consummate level of the mountain river tier, how could the perpetrator have committed such crimes and then escaped? Stop twisting the fact. The culprit is clearly you. Luo Wu jabbed his finger at Ling Han. Ling Han shook his head, and said, let's cut the bullsh*t, shall we? Everyone was clearly attacking me just then. What chance did I have to assassinate others? 7 others, mind you. Stop making unfounded claims. Fan Yong said calmly. Exactly, stop spewing bullcrap. Luo Yu immediately refuted Ling Han's claim as well. It would definitely be troublesome if news of him trying to assassinate a fellow student of the Scarlet Heaven Academy were to spread. Yang Tai-cheng wore a deep frown as he listened to the others speak. He had naturally noticed that everyone was indeed attacking Ling Han during the commotion just then. If one were to say that Ling Han could still find the opportunity to kill 7 people under such relentless attacks, he definitely wouldn't believe them. On the other hand, however, Ling Han's actions were indeed the most suspicious. He was the one who had suggested entering the Black Fog again, and he was also the one who bad blood with the Black Five gang. Right now, all the evidence was pointing toward Ling Han's being the culprit. Luo Yu pointed at Ling Han, and said, why don't we enter the Black Fog again? But this time, we have to tie him up. Brilliant idea. Fan Yong immediately clapped his hands in agreement. Hihi, Ling Han, haven't you been claiming innocence this entire time? Luo Wu said. Then don't resist now. If people are killed again, then your name will have been cleared. Ling Han sneered, and said, Are you retarded? If the culprit doesn't kill anymore, won't I become their scapegoat? Also, all of you are staring at me with such hostile expressions. Do you think I dare to let you restrain myself and become your targets? Brother Yang, you're the owner of this ship. I'll leave the decision to you. Luo Yu passed the problem to Yang Taicheng. Yang Taicheng pondered for a moment, and said, Ling Han, come over here. I'll ensure your safety. By saying this, it was clear that Yang Taicheng had agreed to Luo Yu and the others' suggestion. They would restrain Ling Han, and then enter the black fog again. Ling Han hesitated for a brief moment, and then said, Fine, I trust Captain Yang. He nodded at Shui Yenyu, and both of them walked to Yang Tietcheng's side. Yang Taicheng retrieved 2 sets of handcuffs, and said, These handcuffs are forged from level 4 godly metal, and there are even 3 divine patterns engraved onto them. Once restrained, even cultivators at the consummate level of the mountain river tier won't be able to escape. Everyone nodded in understanding. These handcuffs were specifically made to restrain elites. While these 2 sets were forged from level 4 godly metal, there were also ones that were forged from level 6, 7, or 8 godly metal. Some of the high-level ones could even restrain elites at the Sun-Moon tier. Meanwhile, the 3 engraved divine patterns would suppress the power of cultivators. Once restrained, cultivators would become no different from cripples. Hihi, he's dead this time. Luo Yu and the others said in their minds. They didn't give a toss whether Ling Han was the culprit or not. All they wanted to do was seize this opportunity to end Ling Han's life. Yang Taicheng handcuffed Ling Han in front of everyone else, and said to him, Rest assured, I'll definitely protect you until my last breath. Ling Han didn't believe him for a second. Yang Taicheng was indeed powerful, but the other people on this ship weren't weak, either. Luo Yu, as well as Liu Ying and the other 3 females, were all at the consummate level of the mountain river tier. If the 5 of them targeted him together, how could Yang Taicheng block them? As long as they could distract Yang Taicheng for just a few seconds, the remaining people would naturally be able to easily kill Ling Han. Ling Han only agreed to their suggestion because he had the Black Tower. Lads, come over here and form a circle around these 2 people, Yang Taicheng suddenly shouted. Don't move from your spot even if you're killed. Understood, the 20 or so sailors answered in unison. They immediately formed 2 barriers in front of Ling Han and Shui Yenyu. Humph. They're mere trash at the low extreme of the mountain river tier. What use will they be? Luo Yu and the others all sneered in their minds. The gulf between each cultivation level in the immortal level was extremely huge. Even a difference of 1 subminor level would give a crushing advantage to the cultivator with the higher level, let alone a difference of 2 or 3 subminor levels. Even the fabled 5-star geniuses would only be able to swallow down their grievances. The ship turned around to enter the black fog again. Everyone immediately fell silent. The ship slowly entered the fog, and, when the last ray of sunshine disappeared, an intense battle instantly erupted again. Ding, 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 peng, peng, peng. Everyone unleashed their attacks without reserve, drowning the ship in flashes of swords and gushes of power. Yang Taicheng bellowed loudly as he blocked those who were charging over. He was at the consummate level of the mountain river tier, and he had even more so reached the peak stage of this minor level. Unless he broke through to the sun-moon tier, there was already no room for him to grow stronger. With thousands of years of battle experience, his battle prowess had already become resilient and domineering. Right now, his fists were no weaker than godly metal of the same level. Moreover, he was a 2-star genius, so his battle prowess was truly extremely frightening. However, the problem was that too many people were attacking him right now, and none of them were aiming for him. Instead, all of them were trying to barge past his blockade. As a result, it became extremely hard for him to stop them. It was simply impossible to keep all of them back. The sailors started to wail and moan in agony as they collapsed to the deck. You dare. Yang Tai-cheng flared up in rage, and his 3-meter-tall body started to radiate with a metallic black sheen. He was finally unleashing his full powers. Chapter 1010 Pirate Attack. Chapter 1010 Pirate Attack. The chaotic battle continued to rage as the ship slowly left the black fog again. When sunshine reappeared, the chaotic battle instantly came to a stop. A black glow danced around Yang Tai-cheng's body, making him appear as if he were a demon god from hell. An overwhelming aura radiated from his body as he swept his gaze over the surroundings. The 2 barriers of sailors had already collapsed into a moaning heap of pain and agony. Fortunately, they were only injured, not killed. He breathed a small sigh of relief, yet killing intent instantly flashed across his face. 2 people were lying face up with blood gushing from their chests. Pools of blood had already formed under their bodies. The mysterious assassin had appeared again. It was evident that the assassin's target was Ling Han. After disposing of the 2 people who were in the way, everyone was stupefied. Ling Han stood unscathed in the same spot as before. Shui Yenyu stood beside him, and both of them appeared incredibly calm. There wasn't the slightest hint that they had participated in the battle just then. This was absolutely mind-boggling. All of them were marked in some way or another due to the chaotic battle beforehand, yet the target of everyone's attacks, Ling Han, was somehow completely unharmed. Looking closely, the cuffs on Ling Han's hands and feet were still firmly locked into place. This left them at a loss for words. Ling Han smiled, and said, Can you remove the cuffs now? These cuffs could only suppress their power, and were completely useless against their divine sense. Thus, they were naturally able to enter the Black Tower to enjoy the heated sounds of battle again. Yang Tai-cheng removed Ling Han's cuffs, and his expression became livid as he turned to look at the 2 dead sailors. He remained silent for a long time. His eyes were filled with eerie killing intent as he swept his gaze over every single person, and he said slowly, regardless of who the culprit is, I'll definitely weed them out and rip them to shred. Apart from Ling Han, everyone else was a suspect. Report, shouted the sailor responsible for keeping a lookout on top of the mast. Enemies spotted. Enemies spotted. There are pirates sailing over. Pirates. Ling Han was slightly surprised. They hadn't come across pirates in the past few days, yet they actually encountered them at such a sensitive time. Prepare for battle, Yang Tai-cheng said coldly. He knew that the person who had killed his sailors was still on his ship, yet he was completely helpless as he didn't know who the culprit was. This made him extremely angry. Now that there was a pirate attack, he finally had somewhere to vent his anger. 12 small boats appeared before them. These boats were genuinely small, with each only being able to hold 5 people. The people on these boats were all rowing rapidly, causing their boats to shoot forward like arrows. There had been over 2 kilometers between them, yet this distance was quickly cut down to less than a kilometer. At such a short distance, they could already clearly see the sinister and cruel faces of the pirates. Cannons. Yang Tai-cheng commanded. Understood. Boom, boom, boom. The cannons fired, yet the pirates were evidently experienced at dealing with such scenarios. They didn't panic as their boats nimbly dodged the attacks from the cannons. It was almost impossible to dodge a shot that had been fired, as these cannons fired beams of light, not cannonballs. These destructive beams of light were formed by the complex formations that consumed true origin stones. However, the sailors needed to aim before firing a shot, yet the small boats traveled along random, zigzagging paths. As a result, they were able to completely avoid the cannon fire. Prepare for close-quarters combat. Yang Tai-cheng was also unfazed as he continued to issue commands. Ha 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 ha. The pirates laughed uncannily as they leaped onto the ship one after another. This was a mental tactic used to frighten their opponents and make them lose morale. This trip was completely worth it. There are so many beautiful women. These are beautiful women at the Mountain River tier. Each of them commands a high price. Hihi, we'll play by the old rules. Kill all the men and take all the women. Okie dokie. 60 pirates boarded their ship in no time, and an all-out battle instantly erupted. Although they had engaged in numerous mysterious battles in the Black Fog before, and although many people had died, they had only had one common enemy back then: Ling Han. The 8 people from the Black Five gang and the 2 sailors had merely been unfortunate victims. However, the situation was completely different right now. The pirates wouldn't talk about justice with them, and they would kill or kidnap the passengers regardless of what the latter did. In the pirates' eyes, women were wealth, and men were enemies. Die. Everyone knew that this was no time for infighting. Otherwise, they would all become corpses under the pirates' ruthless weapons. Although the beautiful women wouldn't be killed, it was very likely that their fate would be far worse than death. Ling Han drew his sword with a chuckle, and said, "Wife, let's have a competition to see who can kill the most pirate." Why not? Shui Yenyu wasn't one to admit defeat, so she quickly accepted Ling Han's challenge. Ling Han laughed, and said quietly, "If I win, let me embrace you when we sleep tonight. If you win, I'll let you embrace me when we sleep tonight." Damn pervert. Shui Yenyu chided, but didn't forget to slash her sword at the pirates as she spoke. A pirate rushed over with his saber, and said, "You two are fairly lovey-dovey with each other, huh? However, this brat must die. Girl, don't worry, we'll all become your men in a while. We'll definitely feed you until you're full." Ling Han humphed, and unleashed his 7-kill subduing soul technique, immediately sending the pirate who threatened them into a daze. Shui Yenyu followed up with a deadly strike that pierced through the pirate's heart. In the next instant, the pirate's corpse had already been stored into Ling Han's spatial spirit tool. How could they prove that they had completed the mission if they had no corpses to show for it? Spatial spirit tools were widely available in the immortal realm, and it wouldn't be surprising if everyone had more than 10 such tools. B*TCH couple. Another pirate charged over. He was more powerful than the previous pirate, and his cultivation level had already reached the high extreme. Black light fluctuated as his saber slashed over with an ear-piercing screech that almost caused blood to flow out of one's ears. Ling Han unleashed his 7-kill subduing soul technique again, yet the pirate only faltered for a short moment. Shui Yenyu's attack missed its target as it was parried by the saber of the pirate. If Ling Han activated his black tower, he could naturally absorb the pirate with ease. However, it would definitely cause a commotion if someone were to suddenly disappear into thin air. Although everyone was engaged in intense battles, Ling Han knew that many people still had their eyes locked onto him. He humphed as he lashed out with both his sword and palm. The mysterious 3000 and earth overturning seal bore down toward his opponent at the same time. "You're merely at the early stage of the medium extreme. You're not worthy of being my opponent." The pirate laughed loudly as he slashed his sword at Ling Han's waist. With a thought, Ling Han activated his divine patterns of gravity. The pirate let out an astonished groan as the saber in his hand suddenly became a dozen or so times heavier. He hurriedly tightened his grip as the saber started to slip from his hand, yet he couldn't prevent his strike from deviating off its target. The pirate was completely dumbstruck. What kind of secret technique is this? How is it so powerful? One had to realize that he was at the middle stage of the high extreme, which was more than one full minor level above Ling Han. He had a decisive advantage over Ling Han in terms of power, so how could he have been affected? As these thoughts flashed through the pirate's mind, Ling Han's sword and palm had already struck over again. Chapter 10:11 I'll kill you in 10 strikes. Chapter 10:11 I'll kill you in 10 strikes. "You're seeking death," the pirate said with a cold chuckle. When cultivators fought, they were most afraid of engaging in close-quarter combat. This was especially so if one were battling against someone more powerful or someone at the same cultivation level. If one were to charge into close-quarter combat against someone more powerful, they were naturally seeking death. Meanwhile, if they engaged in close-quarter combat against someone at the same cultivation level, they would face a constant threat of death. On the other hand, if one were much stronger than their opponent, engaging in close-quarter combat was definitely the fastest way to end a battle. This brat's cultivation level is far lower than mine. He's seeking death by charging toward me. He can't be a 5-star genius, right? Even if he is, his battle prowess will only be on the same level as me. The pirate quickly swung his saber toward Ling Han. He wanted to end this battle in the shortest time possible. "I'll kill you in 10 strikes," Ling Han said with a smile. "Pu." The pirate almost spluttered in surprise. That was his line, okay? A mere cultivator at the early stage of the medium extreme was actually threatening to kill him in 10 strikes. Where did his courage come from? "Brat, accept your death." Divine patterns materialized on his saber as it cut through the air even more quickly. It was as if the saber were awakening. This wasn't because his saber was a god tool. Rather, this change was brought about because his martial intent had enveloped his weapon as he battled against Ling Han. Right now, his saber was like an extension of his body. Thus, his saber couldn't be underestimated even though it didn't possess the might of a genuine god tool. Wang. A black glow radiated from the saber blade as a dazzling and destructive ray of light blasted into the deck, carving a deep and menacing groove in it. Ling Han danced about and continued to harass his opponent with his divine patterns of gravity. Add to that his 7-kill subduing soul technique, and the pirate could barely unleash 50% of his true battle prowess. One didn't necessarily need to have a higher battle prowess to defeat their enemy. Weakening the enemy's battle prowess could also help one achieve victory. They exchanged blow after blow, and they had already exchanged 9 strikes in a mere few seconds. The pirate didn't dare underestimate Ling Han any longer. However, his opponent was also kidding if he wanted to dispose of him in 10 strikes. "There's only 1 strike left. You're dreaming if you want to kill me." Ling Han ferociously charged over, and it appeared as if he wanted to sacrifice his life to kill the pirate. The pirate was startled by this. However, his surprise quickly transformed into a cold chuckle. He was confident that he could kill Ling Han first. Once Ling Han died, the gravity field that affected him would naturally disappear as well. At that time, he would recover his full battle prowess, so how would Ling Han's strike still be able to hurt him? How foolish. "Do you think you're invincible just because you can hamper my battle prowess?" He viciously swung his saber at Ling Han's head. It was a shame that no one from the imperial capital was here to witness this sight. Otherwise, they would all kindly urge him to definitely not underestimate Ling Han's physique. Doing so would merely be seeking death. Boom. His saber struck down, and sure enough, it hit Ling Han's head before Ling Han could reach him. However, what happened next was astounding. Wang. The saber shuddered, and surprisingly rebounded off Ling Han's head. Pu. The pirate's eyes almost bulged out of his head. The sight before him was far beyond his comprehension. Only now did he realize why Ling Han was so confident. His physique was simply inhumane. "Not good," he shouted in his mind. However, it was already too late for him to retreat. He had initially planned on killing Ling Han, which would in turn greatly reduce the might of Ling Han's own attack. If he succeeded, he wouldn't face any danger at all. But now, a sharp pain stabbed at his chest, and power instantly drained from his body. "The 10th strike." Ling Han's voice echoed next to his ear, yet it sounded as if he was extremely far away. He could barely comprehend what had happened before his consciousness slowly drifted into darkness. Ling Han pulled his sword back, not a drop of blood stained its mirror-like blade. He placed the pirate's corpse into his spatial spirit tool. He then charged toward where Shui Yenyu was to help her deal with her opponents. After being together for so long, their cooperation was already extremely smooth. Ling Han used his 7-kill subduing soul technique to stun the enemies, while Shui Yenyu seized the opportunities to end their lives. As long as their opponents' cultivation levels were below the high extreme, they would be able to kill them in a single combination strike. However, there were 60 pirates, so they naturally caught the attention of many pirates after killing more than 10 of their companions. Xiu. Another powerful pirate who had an image of 4 mountain rivers behind his back charged over. Consummate level. Fortunately, the pirate had only just formed his 4th river. This river was evidently smaller than the others, so the pirate was most likely only at the late stage of the consummate level, not the peak stage. Even so, his strength was still far above Ling Han's and Shui Yenyu's. Ling Han was a full 10 sub-minor levels beneath him unless he was a 10-star genius. There was absolutely no way for him to bridge such a large gap in cultivation level. However, 5-star geniuses were already things of legends, so how could there be a 10-star genius? Humph. Die. The pirate was a baldy with a shiny head, and a string of beads lashed out from his hand as he attacked. Looking closely, however, those beads were actually human skulls. They were simply many times smaller than normal. Ling Han was certain that those skulls all belonged to humans. Moreover, their owners had at least reached the mountain river tier. They had only become so small because they had been tempered and refined by the pirate. The skulls lit up as they whipped over. Pu. Unexpectedly, they spat out streaks of black air that transformed into numerous black swords that slashed at Ling Han. So fast. Ling Han barely had enough time to raise his arms in front of his face before the swords slashed over. Pu, 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 pu. The swords ripped through his clothes and flesh as they pierced into his body. Fortunately, none of Ling Han's godly bones was snapped, as they were extremely sturdy. The consummate level is the consummate level, after all. How frightening, Ling Han lamented in his mind, yet he didn't know that the baldy was actually even more astonished. He was a full 10 sub-minor levels above Ling Han, so his strike should have been able to easily kill him. However, it had only brought Ling Han some minor injuries. This was completely unfathomable. Humph. Ling Han activated his divine patterns of flame, causing the swords on his arms to instantly disintegrate into dust. He then activated his indestructible Heaven's Scroll, instantly healing all of his wounds. A string of curses raced through the baldy's mind as he stared at Ling Han with a dumbfounded expression. This kind of physique, this kind of recovery ability. Unless one could insta-kill Ling Han, who would be able to outlast him? Holy **T. How can there be such a freak? The baldy took a deep breath. By the looks of it, he had to unleash his trump card to insta-kill Ling Han, or at least severely wound him. Otherwise, if Ling Han could easily recover, there would be simply no way to kill him. He clutched the string of beads, and said, "My Buddha is compassionate, help these beings cross the ocean of suffering." Wang. A tremendous divine golden halo radiated from his body. He's clearly a murderous demon, yet he actually has such a majestic attack. The baldy tossed the string of beads into the air, and shouted, "Foolish peasant, let me free your soul." Wang. The string of beads instantly expanded, each skull transforming back into their original size. Counting carefully, there were 360 skulls in total. Ancient Heaven Circulation Formation, activate. Boom. Streaks of black light shot out from the skulls and mercilessly slashed at Ling Han. Chapter 10-12, The Killer Appears. Chapter 10-12, The Killer Appears. Every human skull was spewing shadowy light as they shot out towards Ling Han. 360 streaks of light formed a mysterious formation, greatly boosting the power behind every attack. Meanwhile, after the baldy delivered this attack, his face couldn't help but turn a few shades paler. It was apparent that this attack was very straining on him. Ling Han dared not take this attack head-on. It was one thing for his physique to be tough, but his opponent's cultivation level was superior to his by as many as 10 sub-minor levels. Even his body of diamond would be pierced through, and he would be severely wounded at the very least. Peng, he delivered a palm strike and sent Shui Yenyu to the sidelines, while he himself retreated in another direction. Buddha is merciful, and willing to pass redemption to all. The baldy descended amidst golden light, his face wearing a twisted expression, without the slightest bit of mercy anywhere. Ling Han dodged endlessly, while the baldy continued to pursue him. His abilities were far superior to Ling Han's, so naturally the more he chased, the closer he came. Those streaks of shadowy light descended in a violent surge, and looked like they were just about to catch up to Ling Han. Accompanied by a cold humph, a streak of dark light swept over. Pa, 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 pa. All these streaks of black light were shattered. Yang Taicheng, who was currently engaged in a fierce battle with 3 pirates, had still managed to spare a hand to dissolve the crisis that Ling Han was trapped in. Yet, with this action, he was immediately on the receiving end of the counterattacks from 3 elites of the pirates. A vivid dance of shadow and light wrapped completely around him, and no further sign of him could be seen. You managed to dodge once, but will you be able to dodge the second attack? The baldy smirked coldly. However, he did not immediately wave his string of beads for a second attack. Instead, he merely brandished it and charged over. Obviously, that earlier attack was too straining, and he had yet to recover fully. The pressure on Ling Han naturally decreased greatly. He used the unique terrain on the ship to dodge and evade continuously as he continued to observe the proceedings of the battle. The battle looked incredibly fierce, but there was still a great number that did not use their full abilities. For example, Liu Ying and the other 3 women. They were obviously elites in the consummate level of Mountain River tier, yet merely exhibited abilities on the level of the peak stage of the medium extreme, and were currently in a heated battle with a few minor characters. The 2 members of the Luo clan were the same as well. Their abilities were obviously powerful, yet they purposely pretended to be weak. Otherwise, with at least 5 elites of the consummate level of the Mountain River tier on their side, they had an overwhelming advantage. Looks like their evil intentions have not died, Ling Han thought. These people were reserving their strength. It was obvious that they wanted to make use of the chaotic battle to deliver a fatal strike against him. At that moment, they would be able to push the blame onto the pirates, removing themselves from the matter entirely. After all, no one would want to have any relation with the crime of having killed a disciple of the Scarlet Heaven Academy. I will deliver you to the heavenly paradise. The baldy grinned in a twisted manner, the fingers of his right hand forming an orchid one. He smacked down lightly, and Hong, a real orchid flower, actually took form, and slammed down on Ling Han. Upon a closer look, the stem of the orchid flower was formed from divine patterns, and the light it was exuding further formed shadowy images of blossoms, possessing a kind of sacred aura. To think a murderous maniac would have an aura of holiness and sanctity circulating around him. This was very odd and extremely bizarre. Ling Han quickly dodged. Bang, the orchid smashed into the deck, actually smashing a hole right in it, demonstrating how terrifying this attack was. It had to be known that the ship itself was built from bones of a special demonic beast from the Star Sea, and was incredibly sturdy and tough. Peng, Ling Han was sent flying with the aftershock, and shot sideways. Just at this moment, an incredibly cold sword's light waved, piercing out towards Ling Han's chest. The attacker was shockingly Zhu Gaoyang, that ordinary-looking man in grey robes. But at this moment, his eyes were shining with the light of malice, his whole person bursting with a terrifying aura. The peak stage of the high extreme, he was an elite even stronger than that pirate from before. The sword strike approached, and it was the moment where Ling Han was falling down and his defenses were the weakest. Moreover, the tip of the sword was sinisterly cold. It was obviously a supreme weapon, and added with an installation of power from him, it was very possible that this stab would be able to pierce right through Ling Han's body. The point that he was targeting was precisely Ling Han's heart. This attack was meant to be fatal. The baldy did not know that there were already hidden waves of turbulence on board this ship, and when he saw this scene, he couldn't help but feel it weird, but it was all right with him. In any case, their purpose was to kill all the men here. As for who delivered the killing strike, who cared? Zhu Gaoyang's face was serious and somber, both hands gripping onto the hilt of his sword. There were visible divine patterns flickering on his hands, which extended onto the blade of the sword, causing it to burst with an astonishing glorious light as well. He obviously was also very wary of Ling Han's physique. Hence, this attack had his full power in it, and he was determined to pierce right through Ling Han's body. Many shadows embodiment technique. Ling Han exclaimed in a low voice, and in the instant the sword's tip touched him, he had entered into the Black Tower. Zhu Gaoyang's sword strike instantly missed its target. It should be known that he had used his maximum power in this sword strike, and as it missed its target, the endless power did not find any exit. Naturally, his figure lost control, and charged right ahead. Pu. Quite coincidentally, this strike just happened to stab into the thigh of one of the pirates, causing him so much pain that he screamed loudly. He turned around to look who had attacked him. He felt this was unfathomable. He was presently in a heated battle with one of the crew members, so why had some random guy suddenly stabbed him? He had not expressed how innocent he was when a bang was heard. That crew member that he had been fighting grasped the chance, and struck with his hammer, crushing the head of that pirate into mush. Xiao, Ling Han appeared once more. Naturally, he reappeared on the spot he had disappeared. Yi. Zhu Gaoyang and the Baldy both exclaimed in surprise. The few people that had been paying attention to Ling Han were also no exception. Just now, had Ling Han suddenly disappeared? Many shadows embodiment technique? These people automatically digested the smoke bomb Ling Han had thrown out. That was because in comparison with a spatial god tool, they would be more willing to believe that it was an incredible movement technique. What a joke! How could an ant from a small world possibly obtain the treasure of an ultimate elite of Genesis tier? The word spatial god tool did not flash through their minds at all. This movement technique was very awesome. It should be known that Zhu Gaoyang's abilities were far superior to Ling Han's, and the timing that he had chosen to make his move was exceptional. But, it was precisely because of this that his strike did not succeed. Hiss, was this ant from a small world really so hard to kill? Ling Han smirked coldly, and asked, so the mysterious killer, is you? Zhu Gaoyang was expressionless as he asked, you suspected me for a long time? My departure from the imperial capital must be a good chance that could not be missed to you ghosts. How could there be no movement from the Dark Night Hall? I have long since guessed that the mysterious killer comes from the Dark Night Hall, and in my eyes, you are the biggest suspect. Ling Han said. Those like Luo Yu, Liu Ying, Zhuo Xiao, and the others all had clear identities. Then, if the Dark Night Hall had really sent out an assassin, he would naturally be someone among Jin Zhuohui, Zhu Gaoyang, Fu Tian, and Yin Yuanxiang. However, though Jin Zhuohui was also a swordsman, his sword techniques were wide and bold, it even had a kind of blunt feeling to it, which was completely not conforming to the sneak attack and ambush style from before. Fu Tian was even less of a suspect. This youth was practically a wild beast. His fighting style was barbaric and wild. Every part of his body was a weapon in itself, kept attacking with his elbows, knees, and head. He even opened his mouth to bite others, like he himself was a barbarian. Yin Yuanxiang's weapon was a whip, so she was better at defense than attack. With such a comparison, Zhu Gaoyang naturally had to be the assassin from the Dark Night Hall. At the same time, the possibility that he was also that mysterious killer from before was naturally extremely high. Though Ling Han had been engaged in furious battle with the Baldai all this while, he had also placed a considerable amount of attention on him. He knew that with how chaotic the battle was, the latter might sneak up on and ambush him like a poisonous snake. And Ling Han had indeed not guessed wrongly. Chapter 1013 Greater Danger Lies Behind. Chapter 1013 Greater Danger Lies Behind. Zhu Gaoyang slashed his sword, and sneered, so what if you know? You're still going to die anyway. Ling Han shook his head, and said, brother, you definitely shouldn't have dragged innocent people into this matter. Oh, so you want to stand up for them? Terrifying divine light flashed from Zhu Gaoyang's sword as he relentlessly slashed at Ling Han. His strikes were especially simple, and all of them targeted Ling Han's vital points. Ling Han smiled calmly, and said, I certainly don't have that much spare time. However, there's someone who's been itching to pulverize you for a long time. Zhu Gaoyang continued to attack as he asked, oh? Who is it? Me. Yang Tai-Cheng walked over following a cold humph. An overwhelming aura radiated from his 3-meter-tall body, and his face was livid and full of killing intent. Goosebumps instantly formed on Zhu Gaoyang's skin as he felt a cold chill run down his spine and through his 4 limbs. He was an entire minor level weaker than Yang Tai-Cheng, and he was only an experienced assassin, not a prodigy who could fight above his cultivation level. On the other hand, Yang Tai-Cheng was a 2-star genius. In other words, there was a whopping difference of 6 sub-minor levels between them. There was no doubt that this would be a one-sided battle. Zhu Gaoyang wasn't Ling Han, and he didn't have a sturdy physique, either. Against an elite like Yang Tai-Cheng, it was extremely likely that he would be killed in 10 strikes. Yang Tai-Cheng, die. The 3 powerful pirates also charged over. Yang Tai-Cheng simply blocked them with one hand as he continued to stare at Zhu Gaoyang coldly. Do you still have anything to say? Zhu Gaoyang remained silent. Then, he suddenly became one with his sword. Xiu. His body instantly soared through the air. He wasn't attacking young Taicheng, nor was he trying to drag Ling Han down with him. Rather, he was attempting to leap into the sea. His aim was evidently to escape to the seabed. Although the gravity field here was terrifying, one would almost certainly sink if they entered the sea, and they would have to walk like normal people on the seabed after a good 8 or 10 years, one would definitely be able to walk back out of the sea. This was a better option than struggling against young Taicheng and facing certain death, no? Trying to escape. Young Taicheng sneered as his other hand reached out and grabbed at Zhu Gaoyang. This strike exemplified the crushing power of a cultivator at the peak stage of the consummate level. As if it were a small mountain, his large black hand grew incredibly large. A dozen or so divine patterns that exuded a frightening aura pulsed on his hand. Boom! This hand was far too large, and it instantly cast a shadow over the entire ship, blocking Zhu Gaoyang's path of escape. Sky-soaring sword! Zhu Gaoyang exclaimed softly. His speed suddenly increased dramatically as he became one with his sword and hurtled toward the large hand. Pu! As if it were raining drops of light, sword light exploded through the air. Ling Han activated his Eye of Truth, only to see that Zhu Gaoyang had managed to create a hole in the large hand. Xiu! Zhu Gaoyang dashed out, yet the sword light around him had already become extremely dim. It was evident that he had paid a heavy price to use this technique. Young Taicheng waved his large hand as he charged out in pursuit, and sneered, "Do you think you can escape?" Ah! Zhu Gaoyang screamed in agony as the large hand wrapped around him and crushed his bones. The difference in strength was extremely evident. There was a gulf of 6 sub-minor levels, and Zhu Gaoyang more so lacked the will to battle. His only thought was to escape, yet in the end, this made it even easier for young Taicheng to capture him. Die! The 3 pirates attacked young Taicheng relentlessly. Peng, peng, peng. Their attacks continued to rain down on him. Young Taicheng was only fighting them with one hand, so he was naturally unable to completely mitigate their attacks. As a result, he was struck by a few of them. However, his physique was also astonishingly strong, so he merely had some blood seeping from the corners of his mouth. He was battling against 3 elites at the same time, yet he was still able to capture another elite who was at the peak stage of the high extreme. His strength was truly astounding. Spare me. Zhu Gaoyang immediately begged. I swear I didn't kill them. It really wasn't me, Pu. How would young Taicheng believe him? He clenched his right hand, and Zhu Gaoyang instantly exploded into a cloud of blood. The large hand slowly dissipated as he humphed and unclenched his fist. Pirates, let me send you all to hell today. His killing intent had been inflamed, and an overwhelming might exuded from his tall demon-like body. Kill, kill, kill. The pirates weren't afraid of battle, either. Kaka, brat, it's only you and me again. Die. The Baldai started to attack Ling Han again. Ling Han replied with strikes of his own. As long as his opponent didn't unleash his most powerful move, Ling Han's sturdy physique would definitely be able to withstand all of his attacks. He would at most suffer some minor wounds, but these could be instantly healed by his indestructible Heaven's Scroll. In terms of battle prowess, he was only at 5 or 6 stars right now. In terms of resistance to attacks, however, he was definitely at a freakish 10 stars. It was truly unbelievable that even an elite at the consummate level wasn't able to kill him. Meanwhile, Ling Han felt that it was a pity that he couldn't help Shui Yenyu kill more pirates. I'll kill them myself, then. Ling Han continuously activated his 7-kill subduing soul technique, with even cultivators at the peak stage of the medium extreme being affected. After stunning his enemies, Ling Han would kill them with one punch and then store them into his spatial spirit tool. The Baldai roared in fury. He was chasing and attacking Ling Han, yet Ling Han still had the time and leisure to kill his fellow pirates. This was utterly humiliating. On the one hand, the weaker pirates were being wiped out. On the other hand, the sailors on the ship were also being massacred. This caused young Taicheng to almost go crazy with rage. His 3-meter-tall body expanded again, transforming into a giant 6 meters tall. His clothes were torn into shreds, and only a pair of underpants covered his sensitive region. 9 pulsating circular symbols were visible on his body, and they raised his power by a significant margin. 9-symbol divine pattern, a few pirates exclaimed. This is the Yang clan's secret technique, and one has to sacrifice a certain amount of their lifespan in order to activate it. It can raise one's battle prowess by 1 star. Yang Taicheng was already extremely strong. Now that his battle prowess had been elevated by 1 more star, there was definitely no one on the ship who could fight him head-on. After all, this was a secret technique that reduced one's lifespan. To living beings, what was more precious than their lifespan? All of you can die. Yang Taicheng unleashed his fury at the pirates. Ling Han was also astonished by the sight before him. If he were to battle against Yang Taicheng head-on, it was extremely likely that his internal organs would be punctured in under 10 exchanges. After 100 exchanges, even his godly bones faced the risk of being completely shattered. Yang Taicheng was at the consummate level, after all, and his battle prowess had even more so reached 3 stars right now. The pirates were instantly put on their back foot after Yang Taicheng activated his secret technique. Their situation was only worsened by the fact that Liu Ying and the others were all starting to unleash their full battle prowess. However, in Ling Han's eyes, the most eye-catching person wasn't Liu Ying the consummate level cultivator or Yang Taicheng the giant. Instead, it was Fu Tian, the youth who only looked to be 16 or 17 years old. This person was an absolute beast. His cultivation level was only at the peak stage of the low extreme, yet his battle prowess was extremely powerful. He didn't use any weapons, and instead used his various body parts to spectacular effects. In fact, Ling Han had even seen him biting off the nose of his opponent. Chapter 1014, Catastrophe Caused by Demonic Snakes. Chapter 1014, Catastrophe Caused by Demonic Snakes. When cultivators fought, they usually used their hands or feet. Otherwise, they would use some sort of weapon. Only a very, very small minority would choose to practice peculiar techniques such as Iron Head and so on. However, apart from Hu Niu in the past, perhaps this youth was the only other person who used his mouth as a weapon. Fu Tian's fighting style was almost a replica of Hu Niu's. However, he was even more vicious, with his steel-like hands being able to easily rip through his opponent's defenses. He would tear their intestines out and crush their throat with his mouth. In fact, he would attack in whatever manner as long as it could kill the enemy. He truly took full advantage of all his body parts. This was, of course, a result of him training intensely. He had most likely experienced countless similar battles, and such attacks had perhaps already become a natural instinct to him. Once he started fighting, his body would naturally move according to these ingrained instincts. Where on earth did this youth come from? Retreat! Retreat! The pirates couldn't endure the attacks any longer. 60 of them had boarded this ship, yet only less than 20 of them still remained standing. They had undoubtedly suffered a heavy loss. Most importantly, they were still unable to capture this ship after losing so many companions. None of you shall escape. Yang Taicheng humphed coldly. He unleashed his full battle prowess as he charged from one end of the ship to the other. He was determined not to let a single pirate escape. Peng! At this moment, the ship suddenly shuddered violently, and almost capsized. The people on the ship all stumbled and stopped their battles. What was going on? Not good. The expressions of Yang Taicheng and a few pirates changed drastically as they peered into the distance. Judging by their shocked and terrified expressions, they had definitely come across grave danger. Ling Han activated his Eye of Truth and also peered into the distance. He saw hundreds of giant snakes swimming over, each measuring over 30 meters in length and having a body as thick as a barrel. Green patterns adorned their bodies. Green-patterned demonic snakes, a sailor yelped. It was a type of demonic beast unique to the Star Sea. They were descendants of the demonic snake, and were a type of social demonic beast. Each nest would have at least several hundred mature snakes at the mountain river tier. When coming across such demonic beasts, the only option for small-sized ships was to escape. Peng! The ship shuddered again, and it suddenly tilted to the left. It was already on the verge of capsizing. Humph! Yang Tai-Cheng leaped toward the right of the ship and heavily stomped down. The ship shuddered violently, and the momentum of the tilt was instantly halted. Then, the ship started to tilt the other way. At the same time, there was a gigantic snake ramming the ship from underneath, trying to capsize it. If the cultivators fell into the water, their battle prowess would definitely take a huge hit. After reaching the immortal level, these demonic beasts were as intelligent as humans, and could even shapeshift into human form. Thus, they naturally knew how to maximize their advantages. Ling Han looked around, only to find that they had already been encircled by the gigantic snakes. These snakes measured over 30 meters in length, and all of them were at the mountain river tier, though it was unclear what their specific cultivation level was. There were also some small snakes that measured only 3 meters in length, though these snakes lagged a long distance behind their gigantic brethren. Moreover, they were only at the shattering void or heaven tier. It was clear that they didn't have the right to participate in the battle. They could only come over to feast on the flesh of the cultivators after the gigantic snakes finished the fight. Spiritual meat was nutritious to cultivators, and on the flip side, the blood essence of cultivators was also nutritious to demonic beasts. This was especially the case with immortal level cultivators, whose blood essence was extremely nutritious to demonic beasts at the shattering void tier. This nest of snakes had probably been attracted by the stench of blood in the sea. They were here to enjoy a hearty meal. The situation was extremely precarious. Peng! The ship continued to rock back and forth as the snake underneath the ship relentlessly tried to capsize them. Right now, none of them dared to fight among themselves anymore. They stood at the edges of the ship as they used their powers to maintain its balance. If the ship capsized, few of them would be able to survive. Peng! 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 As if someone were beating gongs, the ship groaned and creaked as it shuddered violently. Damn it! These demonic snakes are trying to break the ship apart. Their expressions all changed drastically. If one were to dive into the sea right now, they would see over 10 snakes spitting pellets of water at the bottom of the ship. These pellets of water would explode upon hitting the bottom of the hull, causing it to rock intensely. Further below these snakes, there was a gigantic demonic snake that measured over 300 meters in length. The patterns on its body had a dim silver luster. This was the demonic snake king, and its cultivation level had already reached the peak stage of the mountain river tier. In fact, it even had a chance to break through to the sun-moon tier. Thus, the patterns on its body were also different from the other snakes. It was this snake that had been ramming the ship and trying to capsize it before. As if it were being lashed by a severe storm, the ship rocked back and forth vigorously. Those who were under the immortal level were all thrown off their feet and into the sea. Meanwhile, Ling Han and the others stood their ground firmly as if their feet were glued to the deck. They remained still no matter how hard the ship rocked or shuddered. However, their expressions were all especially solemn. They all knew that it was only a matter of time before the ship broke apart. We've already been stuck here for a long time. If we can hold on for 2 more days, the next ship will catch up to us. It's a large ship, and there's a great elite at the sun-moon tier guarding it. Yang Tai-Cheng tried to raise everyone's spirits. If there were a great elite at the sun-moon tier, they would be able to slay thousands or even tens of thousands of these snakes, much less a mere several hundred. The problem was, could they hold on for 2 more days? The ship is falling apart, Fu Tian suddenly shouted. However, there was no hint of apprehension on his face, only an unyielding fighting spirit. He was definitely a battle maniac. Crack! Sure enough, a loud snapping sound traveled out from the ship. Its keel had been shattered. They all looked at each other, yet the ship disintegrated with a deafening boom before they could even open their mouths to speak. The ship broke into dozens of pieces. Find a piece to stand on, Yang Tai-Cheng roared. Otherwise, you'll definitely die if you battle while not being able to float. He was the captain of the ship, so he had to take responsibility for the safety of his sailors and passengers. Everyone heeded his advice and found various pieces of the ship to stand on. The pirates also stopped fighting. The the 20 or so of them moving to 3 separate pieces of the wreckage. As for the small ships that they had come on, these had already been obliterated by the demonic snakes. Boom! A gigantic snake surfaced from the sea and slammed its thick and powerful tail into a group of people who were standing on flotsam. Unfortunately, Ling Han was on this piece of wreckage. Fortunately, however, Yang Taicheng was also on this piece of wreckage. Fuck off. He clenched his fist and swung it at the snake's tail. Peng! The snake's tail exploded into a cloud of blood, and the excruciating pain made it squirm about and send huge waves surging through the sea. As expected of Yang Taicheng. So strong. Wife, come closer. Ling Han's left arm was wrapped around Shui Yenyu's slender waist as he held his sword in his right hand. Us two lovers might die here today, yet you still haven't told me that you love me yet. You're not going to let me die with such regret, are you? Shui Yenyu rolled her eyes at him. Ling Han was far too good at acting. He clearly had the Black Tower, so even if the others all died, the two of them would still be absolutely safe. Chapter 1015, Demonic Snake King. Chapter 1015, Demonic Snake King. The demonic snakes started to attack. Peng, peng, peng. Their attacks varied greatly, with some snakes spitting water pellets and other snakes whipping their tails. There were also snakes that rammed the flotsam with their bodies. Anyhow, their goal was all the same, and that was to push Ling Han and the other survivors off the wreckage and into the sea. Once they fell into the sea, the demonic snakes would be able to transform them into food with ease. Now that it had come to this, none of the cultivators dared to hide their abilities anymore. Otherwise, they really would be seeking death. They all unleashed their full battle prowess. Although Ling Han didn't need to worry about his safety, it would still be extremely troublesome if he were to sink to the seabed and have to walk back to shore. Thus, he also unleashed his full strength, using his body like a bow and his origin power as arrows as he attacked the snakes in the distance. He didn't use the arrows that were forged from godly metal, yet he was still able to unleash a battle prowess of 5 stars. One had to realize that Ling Han's cultivation level had already reached the early stage of the medium extreme. After an elevation of 5 stars, his battle prowess was now on par with the middle stage of the medium extreme. As such, the demonic snakes with a cultivation level under the high extreme were all insta-killed by his arrows. This couldn't be helped. The annihilating dragon star arrow was too fast, and those weaker than Ling Han didn't have any chance of dodging it at all. Their only choice was to be insta-killed. Although cultivators were generally afraid of close-quarter combat, they would still only maintain a distance of around 7 or 8 meters when they fought. This distance could maximize their battle prowess. However, this distance was nothing compared to the annihilating dragon star arrow. As a result, no one could compare to Ling Han when it came to the efficiency of slaying enemies. When Yang Taicheng saw this, he decided that he might as well only defend and not attack. He would ensure the safety of the wreckage they were on, while Ling Han would freely unleash his most powerful attacks. Shio, 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 shio. The arrows whizzed out one after another, causing huge damage and many deaths among the nest one of snakes. Peng! The seas instantly parted as a gigantic demonic snake slithered out. The patterns on its body were surprisingly silver in color. Demonic Snake King. Yang Tietching's expression instantly became grim. Shua! The demonic Snake King opened its jaws as it appeared and spat a large water pellet at Yang Taicheng. This water pellet was no slower than Ling Han's annihilating dragon star arrow, and it arrived before Yang Tietching's body almost as soon as the demonic Snake King spat it out. Ha! Yang Taicheng poured all of his power into his fist as he punched at the water pellet. Peng! His fist collided with the water pellet, yet the tremendous force sent him flying hundreds of meters back. Only then did he fall into the sea with a plop. Even the powerful Yang Taicheng is no match for the demonic Snake King. Everyone was stunned by this sight. Were they all going to die here? Peng! A figure surfaced from the sea. This was none other than Yang Taicheng, and his legs became a blur as he sprinted across the water surface. He was pushing himself to the extreme, and cold sweat was pouring down his face. The gravity field enveloping this sea was tremendously powerful, meaning that one would need to expend huge amounts of origin power if they wanted to resist its pull. Thus, Yang Taicheng had paid a huge price even though he had only covered a short distance of a mere several hundred meters. There was nothing he could have done about this, either, as sinking to the bottom would have been as good as dying. Dozens of giant snakes instantly dashed toward Yang Taicheng. However, he was a 3-star genius on top of being at the consummate level right now, so he was able to kill a snake with each punch that he threw. The air around him instantly became misty with blood. The demonic Snake King was enraged, and it immediately slithered back into the sea. When it resurfaced, it was already in front of Yang Taicheng's body. Its head was held high as it prepared to spit another water pellet. Go! Ling Han fired another arrow. However, not only did he locate the demonic Snake King's weak point with his Eye of Truth this time, but he even activated his divine patterns of flame to increase the might of the arrow. Even the demonic Snake King didn't dare face this attack head-on. Pa! The demonic Snake King swatted the origin power arrow aside with its tail, yet Yang Taicheng had already seized the opportunity to escape from before it. He leaped through the air and landed on a wooden plank. Although this plank was small, it was enough to let him catch his breath. The wooden plank bobbed up and down in the sea. The demonic Snake King was furious, and it whipped its head around to glare at Ling Han with its lantern-sized eyes. A frosty aura radiated from its body. Apprehension gripped Ling Han's heart. The demonic Snake King was incredibly powerful, and it was probably infinitely close to reaching the Sun-Moon tier. It was because of its overwhelming might that Ling Han felt a cold chill shoot through his body. Its attack was definitely going to be earth-shattering. It was this brat that attracted the attention of the demonic Snake King. Push him into the sea. Otherwise, we'll all be dragged down along with him. Luo Wu and Fan Yong were also on the same piece of wreckage, and right now, both of them were staring daggers at Ling Han. It was evident that the demonic Snake King had its eyes set on Ling Han. Under its powerful attack, the other people on the wreckage would also be affected. However, if they pushed Ling Han off, they would still be able to hold on to their dear life for a little while longer. As long as they lived, there was still hope that they could survive until the next large ship came. At that time, they would be freed from this precarious situation. Why don't you two jump off? Ling Han asked coldly. These two people were truly selfish to the extreme. They were already facing such an ordeal, yet the two of them still persisted in causing internal conflict. In your dreams. We'll send you on your way now. Luo Wu and Fan Yong reached out in unison. They had come here to kill Ling Han anyway, and they had only held back because they had been afraid of the others before. Now that their lives were in danger, what more did they care? Both of them were elites at the high extreme, so the might of their attacks was naturally astonishing. Ling Han humphed as he activated his 7-kill subduing soul technique. His target was Fan Yong, yet a barrier of light unexpectedly materialized on his body, forcefully blocking his spiritual attack. Fan Yong roared with laughter, and sneered, "Ha ha ha ha. Young master bestowed me with this rare treasure that can defend against divine sense attack. Moreover, it's a treasure that's been refined by a great elite at the heavenly body tier. You didn't expect this, did you? It was a pity that the divine sword was with Zhuo Xiao right now, or he would have been able to cut Ling Han into two. This didn't matter, though, as he and Luo Wu would definitely be able to blast Ling Han into the sea. Peng! The two of them attacked in unison, and, sure enough, Ling Han was directly pushed off the wreckage of the ship. He fell into the sea with a plop. Ling Han! Shui Yenyu yelped in astonishment, and jumped into the sea after him. Stupid woman! Fan Yong couldn't help but curse upon seeing this. However, his expression was relatively dark. He knew how obsessed Zhao Lun was with this woman. Zhao Lun was determined to make her his wife once he advanced to the Sun-Moon tier. However, there was a 99% chance that Shui Yenyu would die in this sea now, so how were he and Zhuo Xiao supposed to explain this to Zhao Lun? He didn't have the spare time to mull over this thorny problem now, as the demonic snakes had already started to launch a new wave of ferocious attacks. Kill, 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 kill. Although there were few beings on both sides, they were all immortals at the Mountain River tier, and they were all equivalent to bodies that gathered the essence of heaven and earth. The blood that they shed possessed overwhelming vitality and power, and the nearby seawater was all dyed a bloody red. This attracted countless weaker fish, but also attracted beings that were more powerful than them at the same time. A large flat fish appeared. Its two eyes were surprisingly located on only one side of its head. Its speed was incredibly quick, and it spread its jaws open as it surfaced from below the sea. At least a dozen giant snakes instantly disappeared into its mouth. It was a terrifying demonic beast at the Sun-Moon tier. Chapter 1016 Extreme Shamelessness. Chapter 1016 Extreme Shamelessness. A demonic beast at the Sun-Moon tier had appeared. Not only were the cultivators fleeing as quickly as they could, but even the nest of demonic snakes was also fleeing in all directions. The demonic snake king that had been extremely mighty and ferocious just then was like a mere eel before the gigantic fish. It became the gigantic fish's main target, and it was captured and disposed of in no time at all. It was crushed in the gigantic fish's maw, and then it was swallowed into its belly. The demonic snake king had been one step away from advancing into the Sun-Moon tier, yet it was this tiny distance that set it apart from a being that was genuinely at the Sun-Moon tier. It was unable to put up any true resistance before being eaten. The gigantic fish didn't seem satisfied, and it immediately swam toward the remaining survivors. It wasn't picky at all, and it ate demonic snakes and cultivators alike. After wreaking havoc and satisfying its craving, it swished its tail and disappeared into the depths of the sea. The situation truly changed a myriad of times in the blink of an eye. The demonic snakes had been enjoying a great advantage before. Under the demonic snake king's lead, it seemed as though they would be able to wipe out all of the cultivators. However, in the blink of an eye, a large majority of these demonic snakes had already disappeared into the gigantic fish's belly. Only less than 10 remained, and they posed absolutely no threat to anyone anymore. Still, the human cultivators didn't seem to have it any better, either. The pirates had all been killed, Luo Yu and Zhuo Xiao had been killed, and only Liu Ying remained out of Shuo Yuan's 4 loyal guards. The Yang clan had also suffered severe losses, with Yang Taicheng being the only surviving member of the ship's crew. In addition to him, Jin Zhuohui, Fu Tian, and Yin Yuanxiang had also managed to survive. All in all, there were only 7 survivors left. They were all sitting on a piece of the ship's wreckage, and had already drifted extremely far away from where they had been battling just then. All of them wore solemn expressions. A look of surprise instantly appeared on Yang Tietcheng's face as he looked behind him. This was because there was a piece of wreckage drifting toward them from the distance. Moreover, there were 2 people standing on top of it, Ling Han and Shui Yenyu. The others were also greatly astonished as they followed Yang Tietcheng's gaze. Is this Ling Han an undying freak? Not only did he survive everyone's attacks on the ship, he even managed to pull through it unscathed. Afterward, he was targeted by a pirate elite, yet he still managed to live on just fine. Finally, he was blasted into the sea, where, logically speaking, he should have been attacked and ripped to shreds by the snakes. Yet, both he and Shui Yenyu appeared before them unscathed. How were they meant to accept this? Ling Han waved, and said, "Hey, long time no see." He and Shui Yenyu paddled toward Yang Taicheng and the others. The others were all wounded to some extent, and it almost drove them crazy to see how relaxed Ling Han and Shui Yenyu were. Why do they seem like they're on a holiday? Contrary to the others, Yang Taicheng was fairly delighted to see that they were safe. You managed to make it out unscathed? That's great. Ling Han had killed a large number of demonic snakes just then, so he had somewhat avenged the deaths of many of the crewmen. Thus, Yang Tietcheng's impression of Ling Han was much better than his impression of the others. A chilly look flashed across Ling Han's face as he swept his gaze across Luo Wu and Fan Yong. He had been blasted into the sea by these 2 people, and, if it weren't for his black tower, it was very likely that he would have died. He was definitely going to kill these 2 people. What are you looking at? Luo Wu said coldly. Now that it had come to this, he couldn't be bothered hiding his animosity toward Ling Han any longer. After all, it was up in the air whether they could make it back to the shore alive at all. The main problem was that they were drifting along far too slowly. If they were unfortunate enough to come across some demonic beast, there was a strong possibility that they would all lose their lives in this sea. In Luo Wu and Fan Yong's minds, this was all Ling Han's fault. If it wasn't because of him, why would they have come here in the first place? Of course, they would never reflect on their own actions. If they hadn't been hell-bent on killing Ling Han, would it ever have come to this? I'm looking to see how you'll die. Ling Han replied icily. He used his body like a bow and his origin power as an arrow as he aimed his annihilating dragon star arrow at Luo Wu. A cold chill instantly gripped at Luo Wu's heart. There had been an elite at the Sun Moon tier leading him and Luo Yu, so killing Ling Han should have been an extremely easy task. However, Luo Senyun had been unable to board the ship, and Luo Yu had suffered a wretched death, being eaten by the gigantic fish. Only he was left out of the initial group of 3. Now, Ling Han's arrow was pointing at him, yet he surprisingly lacked the confidence to defend himself facing this threat. A major reason for this was because the environment was extremely detrimental to his abilities. Otherwise, he would be able to unleash his movement techniques and completely evade Ling Han's aim. However, the flotsam they were on was only so big, so how could he evade? Jump into the sea. If he expended all of his energy and sunk to the bottom of the sea, there was a possibility that the seabed would be his eternal burial ground. Luo Wu was fairly quick-witted, and he immediately skirted behind Fu Tian's back. He was evidently using this youth as his shield. Fu Tian was infuriated. Like an enraged beast, he roared, "Fuck off. Don't worry, little friend. There's no hostility between you two, so he definitely won't shoot you." Of course, Luo Wu wouldn't give up so easily. If they were on land, he would be completely unafraid of Ling Han. However, he was on the back foot now, and there was also very little room for him to hide. Thus, he naturally wasn't willing to take any risks. Yang Taicheng humphed and scolded, absolutely shameless. He waved and grabbed with his right hand, placing Fu Tian behind himself and leaving Luo Wu in front of himself. Luo Wu's expression changed drastically. He had become an easy target again. "Captain Yang, I paid you a fee to board, so you have to ensure my safety." Luo Wu shouted hurriedly. "We've already been shipwrecked, so my responsibilities have also become void," Yang Taicheng said coldly. "I'll naturally refund and compensate everyone when we make it back to the harbor." "Wrong, wrong, wrong." Luo Wu pointed at his feet as he shook his head, and said, "Look, Captain, we're still on the ship. Even if it's only a fragment, it's still a part of the ship. You're still the captain, so you're obligated to ensure your passengers' safety." He was indeed a shameless person, yet his words did hold some truth. Moreover, Yang Taicheng was a sucker for righteousness, and his expression instantly became hesitant. "Ling Han, don't attack him," Yang Taicheng said. He blocked Luo Wu behind him. "Ha ha ha ha." Luo Wu chortled loudly, appearing extremely smug. There was Yang Taicheng to protect him on the ship, and once they made it out of this situation, there would be no need for him to be afraid of Ling Han anymore. Yang Taicheng suddenly turned around and grabbed Luo Wu by the neck. He was an entire minor level above Luo Wu, and he also had a battle prowess of 2 stars, even though the effects of his secret technique had already disappeared. So, how could Luo Wu block his sudden strike? Luo Wu's smug laughter was instantly caught in his throat. As his neck was being gripped tightly, his face was rapidly becoming beet red. Although cultivators could stay alive without breathing, the circulation of their origin power would also be cut if their necks were to be locked in a tight grip. If they were trapped in such a situation for too long, their spirit would still end up dying. Luo Wu flailed about as he tried to escape from Yang Taicheng's stranglehold. However, this was to no avail, and he only felt more and more unwell. "Although I won't allow Ling Han to kill you, I won't gloss over the fact that you two purposefully blasted him into the sea, either." Yang Taicheng reached out and lifted Fan Yong by the neck as well. The two of them squirmed violently, yet neither of them was a match for Yang Taicheng. They could only flail about helplessly. "Humph. When we disembark this ship, I'll personally deal with you two first." Yang Tai-cheng said coldly. He forcefully flung his arms outward. Pa. Luo Wu and Fan Yong were both dripping with cold sweat as their bottoms plonked onto the wreckage. They felt as if they had walked to death's doors and back. Their heads remained lowered as all kinds of cruel thoughts flashed through their minds. Chapter 1017, Wanting to Forge the Strongest Sword. Chapter 1017, Wanting to Forge the Strongest Sword. The two broken pieces of the ship were now like two small rafts, bearing the fortunate survivors as they floated on the huge sea. They were trying hard to return to the marine routes of the Yang clan. Then, only 3 days would be needed, at most, and they would meet with another ship from the Yang clan and be saved. However, they had survived a great disaster, yet they did not meet their good fortune one. Not long after, they encountered a stormy sea that turned them all dizzy and caused them to lose any sense of direction. When it was calm again, Yang Tai-cheng took out his compass for a look, and discovered that they were extremely far away from the normal marine routes. There was nothing else that could be done. They could only row as much as possible to return to their original marine route. Thankfully, all of them were elites of immortal level, and thus there was no need to worry about problems like food and water. Soon, night fell. Everyone took their turns to rest, but none of them dared to be too relaxed, because everyone was trying to outwit everybody else, so who would really be trustworthy among them? At dawn, a red sun leaped out of the horizon, incredibly magnificent. There seems to be a ship. A black dot appeared ahead of them. Everyone focused their gazes and looked in one direction, and there indeed was something floating on the surface of the sea. Be careful, it could be pirates. Yang Tai-cheng exclaimed. This place was completely distanced from the marine routes of the Yang clan's fleet. The ships belonging to the Yang clan would definitely not appear here unless by complete accident. Hence, the possibility that it was a pirate ship was extremely high. That's not right. Ling Han activated the Eye of Truth, and shook his head. He said, that's not a ship. Instead, it's an island. The reason why it looked like a ship was because this island was too far away from them. An island. Everyone felt invigorated. If they got on the island, they would be able to reorganize. At least, they could make a few real oars, or they could even create a sail. It would be better than now, at least. They rowed once more to advance. After quite a long while of rowing, that island was also becoming gradually bigger in front of their eyes, and finally, they could see it clearly. That was indeed an island, and it was a very big one. This stunned quite a few of them. How could Ling Han's sight be so good? Another long while passed, and they finally landed on the beach. We'll move separately. 1 day later, we will gather back here. We will collect all materials that can be used, Yang Tai-cheng said. He stored away the 2 broken pieces of his ship to prevent anyone from leaving by themselves and leaving everyone else on the island. Ability-wise, he was the strongest. He was also the captain, so naturally, he would be the one calling the shots. Furthermore, he was more trustworthy. Otherwise, it didn't matter who got a hold of these 2 boats, for the others would not be at ease. Luo Wu and Fan Yong exchanged a look. After their shared trial, they had formed an alliance. Now that everyone was moving separately, they naturally had their eye on Ling Han. Unfortunately, Yang Tai-cheng chose to go with Ling Han, which caused the duo's plan to tail and kill him secretly to completely fizzle out. Actually, Ling Han was feeling a bit sorry too. He still had the crimson ground locking net which he had not used yet, so even against a cultivator in the high extreme, he would be unafraid. Moreover, he could stun his opponent with the 7-kill subduing soul technique, and draw them into the Black Tower, so he was assured of victory against any cultivator in the high extreme. This island was very big, and had a narrow, elongated shape. They were now at about 1/3 of the island. Hence, they separated into 2 groups. One group would head east, while the other group would head west. The island was covered with dense jungle, and each tree was at least 300 meters tall, with huge leaves. Hence, if one were to walk underneath the trees, there was practically no light that could penetrate the canopy, making it appear extremely spooky. Ling Han's group had 6 people. Aside from himself and Shui Yenyu, there was also Yang Taicheng, Yin Yuanxiang, Fu Tian, and Jin Zhuhui. Very obviously, Yang Taicheng had separated Ling Han from his enemies. "Brother Jin, you keep holding onto a sword, don't you feel tired?" Ling Han asked the young man who was hugging his sword after they had set out. Jin Zhuhui shook his head, and replied, "Only when I experience the feelings of the sword at all times would I be able to forge an excellent sword." Was he a sword maniac? Shui Yenyu suddenly twitched slightly, and asked, "Could it be Brother Jin comes from the Sword Forge Manor?" If it was another man, being the focus of attention from a seductive beauty like Shui Yenyu, he would probably be completely dizzy with ecstasy. However, Jin Zhuhui did not have the slightest bit of reaction. He merely hugged his sword as if it was his true love. "Indeed, I do come from the Swordforge Manor," he answered with a nod, appearing not to have the slightest bit of subtlety. As expected, Shui Yenyu nodded. All members of the Swordforge Manor had the surname Jin. "What Swordforge Manor?" Ling Han asked. The Swordforge Manor is the most acclaimed holy land of weaponsmiths on the Joint Peace Planet. However, this manor only forges swords, and does not forge any other types of weapons. The blades they forge are not only sharp and sturdy, quite a number of them also has their own unique attributes, Shui Yenyu explained. Every swordsman would be proud of having a sword from the Swordforge Manor. So awesome. Ling Han couldn't help but smile and ask, "Brother Jin, if I obtain the materials in the future, can I ask you to forge my sword?" Yang Taicheng couldn't help but shake his head. He had naturally heard of the Swordforge Manor, and also knew that the people from this manor were very strange. They were obviously famous all over the world, yet did not care the slightest bit about money or power. They were too busy forging their swords. However, though they enjoyed forging swords, it was up to their mood whom they would be willing to forge a sword for. Some had paid astronomical amounts and it was still useless, whereas some people needed not pay a single cent and would be gifted a sword of their own. Since Ling Han had spoken so rashly like this, he was probably going to meet with a merciless refusal from Jin Zhuhui. "Okay," Jin Zhuhui said, nodding without hesitation. "Pu." Yang Taicheng almost choked. Wasn't it said that everyone from the Swordforge Manor had weird temperaments? How could he have agreed so easily? Jin Zhuhui scratched his head, and said a bit shyly, "However, I have not forged a single sword yet." Fuck. No wonder he had agreed so readily, he should only be an apprentice. Yet Ling Han laughed loudly, and clapped a hand on his shoulder, and said, "Then, it's decided. In the future, my sword will be up to you. Are you not afraid I will waste your materials?" Jin Zhuhui asked in surprise. When others heard him say this, they were likely to shake their heads directly. Even those who gave him some face would change the topic and no longer speak of the matter of forging a sword. Ling Han said, "With what you said earlier about wanting to experience the feelings of a sword, I am certain you can forge an excellent, supreme sword." Jin Zhuhui couldn't help but feel excited. Even in the Swordforge Manor, he had never gotten the approval of a single person. Even his father merely advised him not to daydream. Only this man in front of him approved of it. Most importantly, though his idea of experiencing the feelings of a sword was something he'd said himself, hearing it from Ling Han's mouth gave him the feeling like he had encountered an intimate friend. "All right. In the future, I will definitely forge a supreme sword for you." He clenched his fists, his eyes shining. Previously, he had spoken little, but now it seemed like his vocal box had been opened. He thought of Ling Han as an intimate friend, and spoke endlessly. "Brother Ling, I want to forge the strongest sword in this world," he exclaimed. Chapter 1018, Giant Pit. Chapter 1018, Giant Pit. The strongest sword? Ling Han was surprised. This was not something to be said easily. Did the strongest exist in this world? There would always be a mountain taller than the last. There was only talk of a stronger existence, so where would this strongest sword come from? Yang Taicheng and the others shook their heads as well. The talk of the strongest should only be the naive thoughts of a child. The strongest sword. Jin Zhuhui shook his head continuously. "I will definitely forge the strongest sword." "How?" Ling Han was very intrigued. Jin Zhehui's whole head was filled with forging swords, and now that he thought of Ling Han as an intimate friend, he would naturally not mind sharing a secret with him. He thus said, I am studying a kind of material. If I can successfully refine it, there is hope of forging the strongest sword. Pu. Yang Taicheng and the others were all disdainful. What material would be that awesome? If there really was this kind of material, what would be left for you to study? It would have long since been snatched away by others. Yet Jin Zhehui did not spare these people a look. Instead, he minded his own business, and said, this is a king of materials that has endless possibilities of improvement. You see, when we forge a sword, no matter how much effort we expend, it would still be limited by the material that it is forged from. True. Ling Han nodded. You could not possibly forge a piece of level 1 godly metal into a level 2 god tool, as the material itself determined that it was impossible. However, if I could extract that kind of material, that kind of essence, and forge it into a weapon, it would be able to automatically swallow other materials or god tools. From level 1 to level 2, from level 2 to level 3, there would be endless room for improvement, Jin Zhehui explained excitedly. Instantly, the eyes of Yang Taicheng and the others all widened. Even their mouths were about to fly open, they were that dumbstruck. A god tool that had endless room from improvement. Putting aside actually making it reality, the mere thought of it was enough to chill the spine. Would any other person think of this kind of fantastical story? If a god tool like that really appeared, the whole world would experience a revolution because of it. Ling Han was also stunned. Then, he put his hand on Jin Zhehui's shoulder heavily. Brother Jin, you are definitely a genius without compare. Jin Zhehui looked absolutely touched. When he related this theory to his clansmen, even when his father heard it, all he received was mockery and ridicule. Even his father, who had the highest opinion of him, advised him to give up such an unrealistic idea. Brother Ling, do you believe I can forge that kind of sword? He asked. Ling Han smiled slightly, and said, if you don't try, then there really won't be the slightest bit of possibility, but if you work at it, then even if there was only a 1 in a million chance of success, there is still at least a sliver of hope. Yes. Jin Zhehui continued to nod his head. Ling Han's words had really touched his heart, causing him to feel as if he had met an intimate friend, and he wanted nothing more than to completely devote himself to Ling Han. Meanwhile, Yang Taicheng and the others lost interest. The strongest sword sounded very awesome, but no matter how they thought about it, it was an impossible endeavor. Brother Ling, after I forge this divine sword, I will send it to you. Jin Zhehui said. He loved forging swords, but was no swordsman himself. In truth, all the members of the Swordforge Manor were outstanding masters of the hammer because they needed to wave their hammers endlessly when they were forging weapons. On the other hand, they were not accustomed to using swords. Then I'll be waiting, Ling Han said with a smile. Jin Zhehui nodded seriously. Because he had met with a bottleneck, he wanted to travel around to improve his mood and seek some inspiration. The deathly battles these few days had given him quite a bit of comprehension. However, though he had no worldly experience, he was no idiot himself. Hence, he did not speak out any bit about this fact. He had made his decision. After he returned, he would cultivate in seclusion, and after he came out of seclusion, who knew, he might have solved all the problems plaguing him, and he would be able to forge the strongest divine sword in history. The group of 6 walked in the dark jungle. However, all of a sudden, a wide space appeared ahead of them, revealing the blinding sunlight, and the 6 people gaped at the same time due to their intense shock. Ahead of them, there actually appeared an incomparably massive deep pit. This pit was overwhelmingly huge. It occupied about 1/3 of the island, and its incredible depth was unfathomable. The walls of the pit were completely steep, without the slightest bit of foothold, as smooth as a mirror. It was like a pillar that connected to the heavens had stabbed this place, and left behind such a hollow between heaven and earth. This was too sudden. Just 1 step ago, they had still been in the jungle, but in the space of a single step, the jungle had disappeared, and this kind of steep cliff had appeared. If they had not been careful, they would have directly taken the wrong step and fallen in. It should be known that the gravity in this region was frighteningly huge, and there was no use for flight god tools. If one actually fell into this kind of deep pit, then it was really unknown whether he would be able to ever come out again. It was not that scary out at sea, because the gradient out at sea was relatively gentle. One would only need to travel in a specific direction, and there would come a day when he would be able to reach shore. But here, if one fell in, there was a high possibility that he would never come out again. They all stretched out their heads and looked down from the edge of the steep cliff, and could only see that the bottom was an unfathomably deep darkness, just as if it could reach the core of the Joint Peace planet. If that was true, then even an elite of the heavenly body tier would die if he fell in. The divine flame inside the planet was definitely capable of turning even an elite of the heavenly body tier to ashes. When they stretched out their heads to look, they were still affected by gravity. They quickly retreated back to safety. If they lost balance and fell in, they would be done for. Lord Yang, have you heard of this island? Ling Han asked. Yang Tai-Cheng looked completely astonished. He shook his head slowly, and answered, apologies. Although the Yang clan is known as the overlord of the Star Sea, I did not know that such an island existed. Sure enough, even the Yang clan did not know. All of them were silent. All of a sudden, this island was shrouded in a veil of mystery, and though the mystery would cause one to feel curiosity, at the same time, it also symbolized unknown dangers. Ling Han chopped down a huge tree, and then threw it into the deep pit. Xiao, the huge tree fell down, and very soon became a little black dot. Then, it was swallowed by the darkness inside the deep pit, and there was soon no sign of it. There was no sound of impact to be heard even after a very long time. The bottom is not connected with the sea, Ling Han said. Everyone nodded. Though they had climbed some slopes along their way on this island, the sea level was definitely not that low. They should have long since heard the sound of the tree splashing into the sea. If it was connected with the sea, then they would only need to enter and explore. They would still be able to find a water channel that connected to the sea, and then find some way to go ashore. But, the current situation was that this pit was very possibly tens of thousands of meters deep. That was too frightening. Ling Han activated the Eye of Truth, but it was of no use. He still could not see to the bottom. Yang Tai-Cheng was the first to look guarded. Very quickly, Ling Han and the others went on the alert as well, and looked towards their left. Voila! 3 people suddenly walked out of the dense jungle. It was not Luo Wu, Fan Yong, and Liu Ying, but rather 3 young men. They were seated respectively on a tiger, wolf, and panther. However, upon another look, one would realize that these 3 fierce beasts were not real animals. Instead, they were forged from metal, and could not really be considered all that full of life. One only need to take a closer look, and would realize that they were not real animals. Puppeteers. Yang Tai-Cheng and the others exclaimed simultaneously. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories,